Encounter with Ancient Egypt. My Horus, this video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 201. He's coming. The conversation with Rhea ended unpleasantly, but she finally agreed. If someone named Kemet asked, she would say that she was not the daughter of Horus and would never believe anything Kemet said. Although she didn't know what the intention was, her instinct told her that Rhea was not lying to her this time. This might be a very serious matter. In the evening, when Nephthys' carnival was halfway through, the royal family members left, and Amos knocked on Lin Ya's door with the court ladies. The red flower juice made from the leaves of the hyacinth was wrapped around her fingertips little by little with a cloth strip. After wrapping all 10 fingers, Amos raised his chin again and motioned her to lift her feet. Do you still want to dye your feet? Lin Ya looked at her hands that were wrapped like a mummy and stiff and unable to move, and then looked at her feet that were still free, and subconsciously shrank back. The toes are so inconspicuous, so there is no need to paint them, right? What else? Amos asked back, and then at her signal, the female official forcefully pulled Lin Ya's feet back, straightened them one by one, and prepared to cover them with flower juice. Your Highness's feet are well-shaped, small, white, and not as thick as others' feet. Your Highness will definitely like it. The female official massaged the soles of her feet and said some nice words, trying to make her relax a little. Her soles were straight and her toes were curled together, as if she was ready to run away at any time. It was really not easy to apply the flower juice. But what she said was obviously wrong. Seeing Amos quietly retracting his feet, the female official thought that she might have said something wrong, and didn't know how to make up for it, so she closed her mouth. The soles of her feet tightened a little more. Her words not only made Amos feel embarrassed, but Lin Ya also felt a chill. Feet? Isn't liking feet a foot fetish? Okay, yeah, relax your feet. Seeing that the female official was about to cry, Amos raised his eyebrows. Or do you want to apply it yourself? Lin Ya looked at her tightly wrapped hands, remembered that she had just said that she had to leave it for at least one night, and resigned herself to loosening her feet. The female official breathed a sigh of relief, carefully applied the flower juice on her toes, and wrapped them in the same way. The toes were separated by the cloth strips, and she always felt like she was bending her toes. She could only try her best to ignore it and not think about it. I thought it would be fine here, but I didn't expect that this was just the beginning. Still using the remaining flower juice, the female official used a wooden stick to write and draw on her arms and legs. It was quite similar to the illusion of applying henna before Indian weddings, but it was obviously not. The paintings were some religious symbols, and they were not so full. When it was time to go to bed, Lin Ya fell on her back on the bed, wanting to cry but unable to. No one told her that getting married would be so painful besides those tedious vows. What was the point of having someone keep the same posture all night? Your Highness, don't move around at night, or you'll ruin the patterns on your body. That's what the lady-in-waiting said before she left. Why aren't you sleeping yet? Amos lay beside her, turned over, and saw that her eyes were still wide open, thinking that she was worried about tomorrow's wedding. You don't have to worry too much, didn't you recite well today? You should be about the same tomorrow. I didn't. What's wrong with you? I want to turn over. Oh, then just bear with it, you'll fall asleep naturally when you're tired. Amos yawned and slowly closed his eyes when he heard that. Damn, what kind of best friend is this? Why are you suddenly not afraid today? Are you numb after reciting all night? The bedboard creaked, and Amos turned over again. She really couldn't figure out what the tension had to do with reciting all night. If she didn't ask about this, she was afraid she wouldn't be able to sleep. Lin Ya pretended to sleep, closed her eyes, and didn't want to pay attention to her, but she couldn't help poking her arm with her fingertips, again and again, thin and itchy. The oath is written in the folds of the inner skirt. As long as she lay down, she could see it, and no one would notice. The next morning, just after dawn, no one dug Lin Ya out of the bed. She woke up by herself. There was no way. It was flooding festival. The noise outside was transmitted into her ears through several doors, and it was still like it was next to her ears. Your Highness has a good sleeping posture, and the flower juice mark has not faded at all. The female official took the cloth strip off her hand. The nails on the tips of her slender fingers were bright red, which made her skin look even whiter than snow. The maids walked in a row and simply washed her with water drawn from the holy lake last night, which represented the blessing of the god Amon. Lord T will be here later. You can have breakfast before that. The lady-in-waiting smiled. Eh? So early? Lin Ya was still a little confused. What time was it? The wedding started when the sun went down. It was only a few hours ago. She started putting on makeup. In such hot weather in Kemet, wouldn't it be gone by night? It's not early. It will be noon when you finish putting on your makeup. The wedding should be held by then. Amos lazily peeled an apple, cut it into small pieces and put it in his mouth. Seeing her looking at him, he picked up another piece with a knife and fork. Do you want to eat? Lin Ya wanted to shake her head and refuse. Isn't the wedding held in the evening? No, it's at noon. Amos blinked innocently and reminded maliciously, when the sun god is most energetic. Ordinary people's weddings are of course at night, but the kings are different. They are the descendants of the sun god, and all important ceremonies related to the sun will be chosen during this time period. No one told me. Lin Ya was a little confused. Noon? How many people are going to be sunburned to death? Maybe he thinks you know. After eating a whole apple, Amos said slowly, and took a handkerchief to carefully wipe the remaining juice on his hands. Didn't you say we would return to the palace in the evening? We'll be paraded through the streets. Someone should come and kill her. She suddenly felt that she had lied enough. The red eyeshadow was evenly applied to the entire eye socket, and the color changed from dark to light, leaving a stretch of light red at the end of the eye that made people think. Close your eyes. She closed her eyes obediently, feeling the wooden stick of tea dipped in the cold liquid and stretched from the corner of her eye to the end of her eye. Then he asked her to open her eyes again and drew the same line on her lower eyelid. This line was not as thick as the ones that the women of Kemet usually made up. Instead, it was a thinner line, with a touch of soft beauty. She dipped the red ointment in the delicate shell with a small brush, and gently pursed her lips, leaving a touch of touching red. T, what are you doing? Braid your hair quickly. Time is running out. The makeup artist paused. Amos frowned and reminded her. Okay, please allow me to get my box. T bowed, turned back quickly, and closed her eyes tightly. The thoughts in her eyes slowly calmed down. She was getting married. She put on the makeup herself. Would the man like it? How would she kiss such lips? From Nakin to Memphis and then to Thebes, she finally fulfilled her wish. This was a good thing, but why was he so sad? Each strand of hair was neatly braided, with wigs mixed in, fixed with resin and hairpins, and the ends of the hair were decorated with scattered gold and gemstones. Various jewelry piled up on Lin Ya's body, but it did not seem cumbersome. T took great pains to make them more beautiful. She was stunningly beautiful in her gorgeous dress. The last anklet clasped together and made a light click. A servant hurried in from outside. Miss, the master asked me to ask if it's ready. His Highness Amónhotep's carriage will be here soon. It's ready. I turned his head and replied. He's here to pick her up. This realization made Lin Ya's heart ripple. I supported her and walked slowly out of the door, step by step onto the red carpet. The carpet was long and laid all the way to the door of the manor. Rhea was outside with a complicated expression and she was so sad that she seemed to cry in the next second. The gate of Rhea Manor was slowly opened by the servant. Lin Ya stood under the flower stand and saw the sunlight coming in through the gap in the door. It was a narrow strip at first, and then it slowly expanded in her eyes and filled her entire eyes. Then he walked out of the sunlight and spread his palm to her from a distance. It was so warm and powerful. I'm late. I've been really busy recently. I'm going back to my mother's house soon. I haven't packed up yet and haven't updated as promised. Please be gentle. Don't take this wedding too seriously, because I wrote it based on some current Egyptian weddings. After 4 months, Yea and Amónhotep are finally getting married. The old mother is so excited that she can't express it in words. Chapter 202, Wedding Blessed by God. Are you nervous? In the sedan chair covered by veils and surrounded by flowers, Amónhotep held her hand and asked her. No, I'm fine. Lin Ya shook her head, held his hand with her backhand, and gently nestled her head on his neck. Your hands are shaking. Really? It will be fine in a while. She didn't comment. She had chosen him, and she had already thought about facing the situation today, and there would be more in the future. Are you ready? After a while, he looked up at her, smiled and asked, his fingers on the veil covering her. Yes. Lin Ya mustered up her courage and nodded heavily. They had already walked onto the main road. Almost all the citizens in the city came to watch this grand wedding. With the veil tied up, Lin Ya straightened her back in an instant, just like the etiquette teacher taught her. "Relax, you can be more casual." She heard the young man beside her say this in a low voice. The wedding procession was very long. The person in the front was a priest from the temple of Amon, chanting a long spell, which basically meant that the gods would bless the couple. Following behind were servants holding incense and scattering flower petals, making the road they walked on more fragrant. After them were palace servants holding feather fans, two in a group, standing on the left and right, with long ostrich feathers matching each other, somewhat blocking the view from the outside. The people stood up and stretched their necks to watch this grand event. His Highness Amónhotep, the regent prince, got married, and the princess was not a royal princess, but a noble lady from the family of the Minister of Finance. The lady's dowry was packed in dozens of boxes, following behind the procession, guarded by guards, and the gold and silver ornaments were dazzling. The last time such a grand event happened in the kingdom was a few years ago, when His Majesty Amos won a great victory and drove out the Hyksos who were entrenched in Sheraton. That time he brought back a lot of gold, silver and jewelry, which he pulled back by boat. The cedar ship had a deep draft, and he sent all the treasures to the temple of Amon and offered them to his priest Amon. The treasures at that time were also like now, full and packed, and each one was unpacked and displayed all the way from the dock of Thebes to the temple of Amon. I thought the next grand event would be the wedding of His Majesty Sefer, but it was a pity that the flower of youth withered before the brilliant prince bloomed. But His Majesty Amónhotep was not bad either. Each of His Majesty's sons was so outstanding. The people always believed that His Majesty Amónhotep would bring a new dawn to this vast kingdom, like his father Amos. Yeah, do you see? These are my people. After today, they will also be your people. I love them, just like I love our children. In every day of the future, I hope to govern my country with you and bring them a stable and prosperous life. Amónhotep stretched out a hand, gently covered her hand, and held her fingers together, saying softly, I will love them as much as I love our children and bring them an ideal life. She promised, and although her voice was still nervous and trembling, it was much better than before. At noon, the sun was shining all over the earth. As soon as she came out of the sedan, Lin Ya felt the scorching light shining on her body, causing some stinging sensation on her skin. Amónhotep held her hand and walked step by step onto the red carpet on the steps of the temple. Various flowers bloomed on both sides of the shrine, and the air was filled with a faint smell of incense. The red carpet stretched to the end of the site, as if it would never end. But just holding the hand of the person next to her lightly, Lin Ya felt that her floating heart had a harbor to anchor. At the end of the road, in the square outside the temple, Tantamon, who presided over the ceremony, and the king and queen, who were the groom's family, were waiting for their arrival. No matter how reluctant they were, their son's wedding ceremony was always a major event. Although Amos and Nefertari were very angry about his stubborn choice of a woman outside the royal family as his wife, they still had to appear on this occasion. Acknowledge the legitimacy of this marriage. In front of the god Amon and the living Horus, the couple made a vow to each other, my life is sweet as honey because of her. My love for her grows like a flood during the flood season, but it will never fade. On the fertile soil of her body, the crystallization of love will come as expected. I love her and will always need her support. I love her more than my life. Without waiting for her to speak first, Amónhotep took the lead and sang his own vow. Her reflection was reflected in the boy's brown-black eyes, which were clear and transparent, as if everything in the world had lost its color except her, and she was the only one who was gorgeous and wanton in his eyes. Lin Ya was stunned by his gaze, as if she was also sinking in the whirlpool in his eyes and would never wake up again. She heard Tantamon's whispered reminder in her ear, so she opened her soft lips and spoke slowly. The oath that she had recited countless times came out of her mouth. Her voice was sweet and pleasant, and there was no stagnation after his. The one I love is Amónhotep, the young man beloved by the sun god Amon-Ra. He is so beautiful, the son of the Lord of two lands, and the one in the hearts of all the people. The one I love is so beautiful that even the sky and the earth have lost their color for him. The sun shines on his strong body, and he has the vitality and youth that even the gods admire. My life is as sweet as honey because of him. My love for him is growing like a flood during the flood season, but it will never subside. On the fertile soil of my body, the crystallization of love will come as expected. I love him, and will always firmly support his every decision. I love him more than my life. It turned out that at this moment, only each other would remain in their eyes when they looked at each other, and they would no longer pay attention to anyone else. It turns out that just by looking at him, those words that are too shy to say can be said so coherently. It's just because the person in front of him is him, that's all. I heard the words of God Amon. He said that their union is sacred, it will inject fresh blood into the kingdom and keep it young forever. Amon Ra blesses the couple in the sky. Finally, praise the great Amon. As Tantaman's voice fell, the wedding came to an end. It was a sunny day, but a thin black cloud floated from nowhere, and it started to rain. The rain was not heavy, only fine raindrops, which instantly took away a bit of burning sensation when they fell on my body. Lin Ya heard the shouts from the crowd, "It's raining. It's a good sign. It's raining. It's a gift from God. Long live the great Amos. Long live Nefertari. His Highness Amónhotep. His Highness Tigaya." Huge waves of sound came one after another, covering the sound of music at the ceremony. At this moment, Lin Ya's heart really rose with a sense of responsibility for this country. She was Amónhotep's princess and the future queen. The people in the audience were her people. She would love them like her own children. Petals fell from the sky, and a real flower rain fell, floating with the raindrops. The raindrops fell on her face, and she felt that something had fallen off, flowing down with the raindrops, wet and sticky. It was not the first time that she had put on flower makeup in ancient Egypt, but it was the first time that she failed to do so at such an important occasion in her life. She subconsciously covered her face with her sleeves, blocking the side of the boy opposite. She heard someone chuckle in her ear, and then her sleeves were lifted up in an instant, and her hands were around the boy's neck. The boy leaned down, and his delicate eyebrows and eyes gradually enlarged in her eyes. He was very beautiful today. It was the first time that Lin Ya saw him wearing such a formal prince's shawl. The peacock blue eyeliner outlined a pair of brown and black eyes, adding a touch of enchanting illusion. His lips slowly fell down, and amid the cheers of the crowd, he kissed his bride. This is his sweetheart, his lover, and his only wife. Considering that his little wife has always been shy in front of everyone, the kiss ended hastily and was just a taste. He wiped off the smudged paint bit by bit with his fingers, and then wiped it at the corner of his eye. The peacock blue eyeliner was blurred, and a blue butterfly perched at the end of the eye. "You look beautiful today." Please imagine the wedding march in your mind. I'm very professional when it comes to emotional scenes. So, I'm not sure if this is yesterday's extra chapter or today's first chapter. Tisk 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 tisk, why do I have to wear a bulletproof vest every day? If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelists. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 203 Candlelight. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 The parade ended at sunset in the afternoon, followed by the Flood Festival, which was celebrated by all the people. As a new member of the royal family, Lin Ya also showed up at the Flood Festival, and then hurriedly returned to Amónhotep's palace accompanied by Apt. He had not returned yet, and the remaining wedding celebrations were still going on. However, Lin Ya did not have the energy to follow him, and left first after making sure that it would be okay even if he left. There was nothing to do when she returned, but if she did nothing and just waited for him to come back, she would feel inexplicably flustered. Already married, already married. She repeated this sentence in her mind several times, and the heat on her face slowly receded for the sake of face. No, I can't be idle, or I will think about it. The dowry that was moved and filled the front hall. She simply washed and began to count the dowry. Why do I feel that there are so many more? This number was obviously wrong. It was much more than what Aksha sent a few days ago, more than half more. Of course it's more. The master has almost given you all his family's wealth, Your Highness. The lady has been arguing with the master because of this. The person who spoke was not Apt, but another female voice that sounded very annoying. Lin Ya turned around and saw a woman with a long thin face and a pointed mouth, looking at her with a flattering face. Who is she? There has never been such a person in her memory, and now she actually appeared in the inner hall without permission. Miss, my name is Mayor, and I am the dowry given to you by the lady. The woman named Mayor spoke before Apt, smiling. Miss is already married, Your Highness. Apt reminded coldly. Oh, we are a family. When we arrive in Memphis, we still have to adapt to the new environment together. Miss can't stop being a lady in Lord Rhea's family just because she is married. Mayer said with a nonchalant smile. Lin Ya frowned fiercely at her words. First, she didn't know her at all. Second, she was brought by Circa. Third, such a retort made Lin Ya feel very uncomfortable. I won't take you to Memphis, and I haven't allowed you to be my dowry. You can go back to where you came from. Without looking at Mayer's drooping face, Lin Ya said lightly. She went to Memphis to live a comfortable life. Why should she take someone she didn't know and didn't like with her? Miss? Oh no. Your Highness. If you don't want me, the lady will beat me to death. Mayer's face changed immediately, and he fell to the ground and trembled uncontrollably. Moral kidnapping? Lin Ya raised her eyebrows. Is this moral kidnapping? What does your life or death have to do with me? But after thinking about it, she slowly spoke. Sure, I cannot send you back. Seeing the person on the ground obviously breathed a sigh of relief, she slowly said, take her down, send her to Amos tomorrow morning and arrange some things for her. This result is obviously much better than beating her to death as she said, but her expression is obviously very unhappy. Before she could say anything, I tied her hands behind her back and twisted her down. When the room was empty and quiet again, Lin Ya found that she could not count the dowry. There was nothing to count originally, just looking for something to do, but now she couldn't count it at all. She heard her heart beating in her chest, again and again. She returned to the living room dejectedly and sat down on the newly decorated bed. The stars were migrating outside the window. She looked up and finally found that no matter how long it took, she still couldn't tell the time of the evening. It should be very late. Is he coming back soon? Today is their wedding day, and also the first flood festival after he became the regent prince. At the festival celebration, he stood taller than last year's steeple on the bow decorated with flowers. The flood festival, the beginning of the revival of all things, everything has a new beginning. What are you thinking about? I don't know how long I sat there blankly, and my cold body was hugged from behind. The warmth surrounded her, and the faint smell of alcohol mixed with a cool mint on his body filled her nose, making her cheeks red the moment she came to her senses. No, nothing. Lin Ya lowered her head and said in a low voice, no, you are not right, you are thinking about me. The voice laughed softly, low and hoarse, and people's bodies softened instantly after hearing it. Tell me, am I right? Do you miss me? Amónhotep was obviously a little drunk, and his breath was full of alcohol, which was completely different from his usual cold appearance. Without waiting for the answer from the person in his arms, he began to get impatient and used his hands to play with her scattered hair. You've drunk too much? Lin Ya was stunned for a moment, then pushed him with her hand, but found that he was holding her so tightly that she couldn't push him away at all. No, did you miss me? He held her tighter, like a child, catching his favorite toy, and then never letting go. I did. After failing to resist, Lin Ya stopped moving, letting him hold her, and whispered the answer he wanted. In fact, it was true. On the wedding night, if she didn't think about him, who could she think about? After getting the answer she wanted, she was so well behaved again. He was satisfied and put his head against her hair and rubbed it twice. What are we going to do? Her mind twitched, and she heard the voice she said from her mouth, which was so dry that she spit it out with difficulty from her throat. After she finished speaking, she regretted it. Wasn't this a confession? Herr Amónhotep smiled softly, his fingers slowly moved down, and slowly groped for the waist chain she was wearing. Do you know why your father gave you this? Why? Lin Ya paused, her eyes moved down to the chain around her waist, and she asked this question blankly. In fact, if he didn't say it, she would also want to know why. She wanted to know why Amos, who was obviously unhappy and disapproving, still wanted to give her something, and after giving it to her, there was still such expectation in his eyes, and he asked her to keep it with him day and night. Why is this? This waist chain is made of gold and silver alloy, and it is hung with various gems and gold ornaments. It looks very strange, with shells and bull heads. This is an item that has been worshipped in the temple of Hathor, representing your father's expectations for you. He said faintly. What expectations? I hope we can have the child belonging to the royal family as soon as possible. His fingertips lifted a little of the waist chain, then moved down and touched her flat belly. Here, there will be a child belonging to us. Child. She stretched out a trembling hand, and tremblingly groped for the beautiful knot tied on Amónhotep's shoulder. Her hands were shaking so badly that she couldn't untie it several times. She heard the man laughing softly in her ear, and then his face appeared in her sight, like a god who had fallen into the mortal world, within reach, no longer out of reach. She slightly widened her eyes, feeling the softness on her lips. "Do you know what you did to me when you were drunk that night?" He chuckled, looking at the girl who belonged only to him, with eyes reddened by drunkenness and soft as water. "From that day on, I did this to you many times in my dreams." What to me? Lin Ya was confused, not knowing whether she was infected by the drunkenness or melted by him. She could only foolishly repeat his questions. The cool air in the middle of the night stirred up some tiny particles on her body, and the moonlight shone in from the window, illuminating the boy's face, handsome and enchanting. The wedding vows echoed in her mind. He was Amónhotep, her beloved boy, loved by the sun god, and admired by the gods for his vitality and youth. The moonlight was bright, and the charcoal in the brazier made a crackling sound. From that moment on, all the storms in her heart stopped, and her papyrus boat stopped in the harbor called Amónhotep. She hugged him as if she was hugging her whole world. On the white sheets, a big wheat-colored hand and a small white hand were clasped, their fingers interlocked, and finally stopped on Amónhotep's chest. He lowered his head, left a light kiss on the clasped hands, and then held them tighter, as if to press her into his flesh and blood, and never tell them apart again. The marriage was consummated, the marriage was consummated. The old mother smiled like an ant. "But in fact I didn't write out the feeling I wanted, but if I wrote it out, I would be gone, and then, even in this case, I would still be gone, so I can only tell you for sure that the marriage was indeed consummated. As for the rest, a wheelchair will do. Who needs a bicycle?" Chapter 204 Terrace. There is a special beauty in Thebes in the early morning. After yesterday's carnival, the streets are still scattered with various flowers that have not been swept. The mist from the Nile River is floating and mixed with a few fireworks in the morning, covering the city with a hazy white. Yesterday's carnival lasted until very late, and there was still a faint smell of alcohol in the air. Lin Ya propped up her chin and looked at the world below on the second-floor terrace. At this moment, the sky is not yet fully bright, and the sun has not risen completely. Not many people have gotten up. From this high-altitude perspective, except for the guards patrolling in the palace, there are few pedestrians on the street. A gust of morning breeze blew over, bringing a chill. She shivered and touched her shoulder, but it was empty. Only then did she realize that she did not bring her shawl when she came out. "I don't know why, I feel extremely tired, but I get up very early. My brain is a little dizzy from not getting enough sleep, but I can't fall asleep. I thought that maybe I was thinking about something in a while, so I just didn't sleep, and went to the terrace to get some fresh air to wake myself up." Every morning, the king would lead his ministers and royal family members to the temple of Amon to wake up the god Amon from his slumber and welcome it to rise from the chaotic east. As a new member of the royal family, this kind of thing cannot be missed. But fortunately, it was only one day. In the afternoon, they would take a boat back to Memphis, and she could live a life of eating and sleeping for a while. There were footsteps behind her, and a corner of the shawl was draped over her cold shoulders. She instantly felt a warm breath. She smiled slightly and hugged the man's thin waist with her back hand. "Why did you wake up so early?" Amónhotep yawned slightly and hugged her back with his hands. His voice was low and hoarse, and there was a pitiful taste in his words. "Shouldn't I be the one asking you this? I got up this morning and found nothing. You don't know how anxious I was." This was true. He had not planned to get up so early, but the bed beside him had become cold as soon as he turned over, and he didn't know how much sleepiness he would have called to help him look for it. If he hadn't asked the maid who was on night watch, the princess would have gone to the terrace early in the morning. He didn't know how many people he would have called to help him look for it. When he saw her on the terrace, he felt relieved, but sleepiness came up again and his eyelids were fighting. So he used her body to support himself and leaned against her in a place where she couldn't see him to close his eyes and take a rest. "But in the past, you would have been empty-handed without me, wouldn't you?" Lin Ya didn't buy his words. She curled her lips and snorted, "But it's different now. You are my wife and my responsibility. I will wake up by your pillow every morning and fall asleep with you at night." He put his arm around her waist, smiled softly, and leaned his head to give her a light kiss on the cheek. She looked up and saw that his eyes, which were not fully open, were sleepy, with a hint of obvious red in the whites of his eyes. She felt a little distressed in her heart. He didn't sleep much, did he? He had been fooling around for so long last night, And he woke up after sleeping for so long. Why don't you go back to sleep for a while? You're in a bad mental state. No, he shook his head, and the sleepiness in his eyes faded a lot. You have to get up so early in the past. You will be out soon. But you, go back and sleep for a while. I will wake you up. I won't go to sleep either. I have something to do later. I can't sleep well. Besides, Tidai will come to do my morning makeup soon. The mention of the palace shaku made His Royal Highness a little unhappy, but he just pouted and said nothing. Lin Ya was only wearing a very thin nightgown. Even with a windproof shawl, Amónhotep still felt that she would be cold, so he could only hug her tighter and tighter. Let's go back? Otherwise, what if you catch a cold? He said with some concern. I'm not cold. You are still blaming me. Why did you catch a cold a few days ago? Lin Ya blinked and smiled, and began to tease him. Me? When did I catch a cold? Amónhotep frowned, feeling somewhat puzzled. Thebes is so beautiful in the morning. The girl in his arms sighed, and he put aside his doubts and agreed softly, it is very beautiful. The palace is the second highest place in the city. Standing at this angle, you can have a clear view of the whole city, but now the fog is too thick, so you can't see the whole picture. The scenery here must be very good, but it's a pity that I can't see it clearly today. She sighed with regret, and then turned away without interest. If it is not a grand festival or some special event after today, I am afraid I will not come back again, but I will be with him. Thinking of this, I am very happy. We still have a lifetime. One day you will stand higher than this and watch with me. Amónhotep raised the corners of his lips, his voice gentle. Lin Ya was stunned. One day? Which day is that day? Aksha, have you never expected such a day? Standing in such a position means the death of the most beloved relatives. He can control the overall situation, but he no longer has a beloved father. No, yeah, everyone will be born, grow old, get sick and die. Father will, what will, you will, and I will too. These are inevitable facts. I'll look forward to sitting in that position one day, and I believe I can do better than my father. Such words made her not know what to say, but she could feel the boundless loneliness coming from him when he said this. She stretched out her hand, hesitated for a moment, then took the initiative to put her arm around his neck and kissed him gently on the side of his neck. The boy was stunned by her kiss. He hugged her tighter, as if he wanted to crush her in his arms. Lin Ya struggled uncomfortably, and then he relaxed his arms as if awakened from a dream. Father and Ma will not accompany me forever after all. Everyone's life is limited. This is what I have known since I was a child. But yeah, you know, although I said this, I greedily hope that you will always accompany me until the day I close my eyes. I don't believe in the afterlife, but I have you, which makes me look forward to the myth saying that it is true. He tilted his head, groped his way to her soft lips, and tried to kiss her, but her hand forcefully lifted his chin. He reluctantly wanted to get closer, but was pushed further and further away. Yeah. He felt aggrieved. On the first day of his marriage, he wanted to kiss his wife, but was rejected. She used so much force and showed such a disgusted expression. Is the honeymoon period over? Lin Ya was unmoved and propped up both hands. Drunkard. Have you brushed your teeth? The answer is of course no. After tossing around on the terrace, he was almost sober. He estimated the time and it was time to get ready to go out. Tea arrived on time. In fact, he didn't have to be used for this matter. If every royal woman had to do it himself, he would probably have to be chopped into several pieces, but he still came. After taking care of the king's appearance, he hurried over and carefully finished her morning makeup. He was very gentle and soft, with a nostalgic look in his eyes that made Amónhotep particularly disgusted. Amónhotep knew that this was a very precious friendship for Ya. Moreover, after today, the two of them would not meet again for a long time, but he still felt uncomfortable. Your Highness, I have asked for permission from His Majesty the King to go to Memphis with you. T said with a smile while braiding her hair. Okay. We didn't have a good look last time. I found some very good wig materials there. I think you will like it. I will take you there next time. This news still made Lin Ya feel very happy, and she promised excitedly on the spot. PFFT, just kidding, I am His Majesty's exclusive shaku, where can I go? T saw someone's face suddenly become unfriendly and tense through the reflection of the mirror, and raised the corners of his lips provocatively. When you come back from Memphis next time, remember to bring me the good wig materials you said. Okay. After finishing the morning makeup, T packed the box silently and walked out the door, but he met Amónhotep unexpectedly. He paused and stopped, but the man did not, and ignored him. "Your Highness." The man passed by him, and he suddenly shouted, "Speak." Amónhotep did not look back or stop, and said lightly, "Will you love her more than your life like you said? Will you treat her well forever?" T looked at the man's back, clenched his hands, and the wooden box made a creaking sound. He was unwilling. "She is my wife. I love her, of course she is more important than my life. I love her, if I don't treat her well, who else should I ask?" The next chapter, on the way, may be late, because I plan to sort out some things. Ababa. Chapter 205, Court Lady to Lin Ya. For your card, Your Highness. After the morning makeup, the maids came in an orderly manner and placed the breakfast on the table one by one. I took a glass of milk from one of the trays and handed it to her respectfully. Drinking milk is a very important thing for the Kemet people. The cow is the symbol of the god Hathor, and milk is believed to nourish the human soul. Lin Ya has always been a person who likes to drink milk. She has a special liking for the raw milk without additives here. The milk is strong and fragrant, and there is a faint taste of grass in the mouth. The main content of breakfast is still bread and date cake. There is a nut dessert that she likes very much. It is not as fancy as Chinese desserts. The shape depends on the chef's touch. If you want to pinch it for you, you can pinch it. If you are in a bad mood, you can slap it flat. But the palace will definitely not let you be so casual, so all the cones in front of you are sharp. Pick up one and put it in your mouth. It is fragrant and crispy. The fragrance of nuts and wheat blends perfectly, but I only insist on eating one and then put it down. This is too sweet, the sweetness is off the charts. What is sweet enough to make people sick? This is it. When Amónhotep put down the last piece of dessert, today's schedule will begin. It was still a little dark, and the great King Amos led his ministers to the Amon temple step by step. The destination was the Amon square in the temple. The sky had turned light blue. Huge worship pillars stood around the square. Tantamon had been waiting here for a long time. The hymn of Amon sounded, Amos took the lead in chanting, and the ministers echoed. The high-pitched singing seemed to pierce the clouds. It was an old-fashioned hymn, something like "Praise Amon, you nourish all things, you are the King of Kings." Lin Ya dozed off every time she heard this kind of thing. She often fell asleep halfway through chanting it, and she had never finished singing it once. Now she had to stand in the front of the team. The dual identities of Amon priest and new princess made it impossible for her to be lazy. But fortunately, the tunes were very cliched, and the singing was not very uniform. When they started singing, she could almost guess what the next sentence was, and quietly mixed in to fill in the numbers. Others didn't know, but Amónhotep, who was standing next to her, heard it clearly. He shook his head with a smile, and then squeezed her hand. This pinch confused Lin Ya, who was already mixed in. She was stunned for a moment, and then happily missed the next few sentences. There were many people singing the hymn. Under normal circumstances, no one would notice her, but it was different for those who didn't think much of her. Nefertari was very sensitive to her pauses and frowned, but she didn't have time to talk about it, because as the queen and the wife of Amon, Nefertari was one of the two people standing in the front row, standing side by side with her husband. "Praise you, great Amon-Ra." When the last line of the lyrics fell, Lin Ya saw a very visually impactful scene. Their timing was precise. When the last tail sound disappeared, it was like some kind of spell calling the sun. A group of newly born sun jumped out from the burning red clouds in the east. The earth suddenly changed from darkness to light. The light dispelled the morning mist in the sky, and the whole city of Thebes seemed to be reborn under the sun. After the chanting ceremony, Tantamon followed behind Amos and entered the most secret place in the temple. No one except the king and the chief high priest's wife could enter the temple to perform the king's personal morning ceremony. Others retreated step by step. To Lin Ya's surprise, she met Amónhotep, but this time, Amónhotep looked at her with an extremely calm gaze, or it seemed that he was not looking at her, but looking through her to see another person. The atmosphere was very strange, so strange that Amónhotep took a step forward and blocked Amónhotep's sight. This weirdness did not last long. In just a few breaths, Amónhotep walked past them and treated them as air. Lin Ya also saw the priest named Tamizes, with a clean face, looking in their direction. It was unclear whether he was looking at them or Amónhotep. Seeing her looking over, Tamizes nodded slightly, smiled gently, and revealed a mouthful of bright teeth. These teeth looked pretty good. Maybe for someone with no hair, no eyebrows, and no eyelashes, this is a very eye-catching plus point. In the afternoon, when the heat faded a little, Lin Ya and Amónhotep's luggage began to be loaded onto the ship one after another. Amos sent them all the way to the dock, and then reluctantly sent them on board. Wait? Where are you going? There was nothing around her, and she felt something was wrong. She stared and looked over. The bald young man had already stepped onto the deck. Your Highness Amos, I am a garrison of Memphis. Where do you think I should go? Thutmose shrugged, looking quite helpless. Did I let you go? If you don't let me go, I won't leave. Thutmose's expression became even more helpless, and he pouted. Amos was so angry that he couldn't speak. His hands trembled for a long time and he couldn't say a complete sentence. Finally, he looked pitifully at his brother on the bow. You stay. Amónhotep felt a headache and looked at Thutmose and said in a low voice. Maybe it was because he had the other half he wanted, so he felt that maybe Tu and his sister were still a good match? In any case, to end this situation, either Amos saw through it and let go, or Thutmose changed his attitude. But the problem came again. Amos's attitude was very clear. She was unwilling to give up Thutmose. She was unwilling to do so. Since she became an adult and expressed her unwillingness to marry her two brothers, Nefertari had already found many young men for her, but she didn't like any of them and was obsessed with chasing Thutmose who didn't care about her. Although a forced melon is not sweet, can feelings be cultivated? Tu was not completely without feelings for her, otherwise a big and strong man would not allow her to flatten and twist him. Your Highness, for the future of the kingdom. After hearing what he said, Thutmose did not express whether he would stay, and then bowed deeply, for a long time, without any sign of getting up. He never wanted love affairs. He was a man, eager to make achievements, eager to shed blood on the battlefield, to pierce the enemy's skull with a sickle in his hand, and leave his name in the history of Kemet. After his death, in his tomb, he could order the craftsmen to engrave his deeds on the wall. He, Thutmose, had followed the king to fight the enemy and captured the enemy's generals. That kind of life was what he wanted. Amos was stubborn, and Thutmose was also stubborn. One stood there biting his lip and did not move, and the other could not bend down. For a while, they were in a stalemate. The appearance of a team of people broke the deadlock. A recliner was carried to the dock. The recliner looked very comfortable, but the middle-aged woman on it sat upright, with no expression on her face. Tunia Amos muttered absent-mindedly, and then shuddered. The couch fell to the ground, and a woman named Tunia stepped down from it and walked onto the deck without saying a word. Amónhotep frowned. The woman was called Tunia, a very prestigious court lady who had served his grandmother Titisheri in the court since her mut. She was a very strict person in terms of etiquette. The two princesses in the palace, Amónhotep and Amos, grew up under her guidance. Even Amos, a devil who feared nothing, would tremble in front of her. Her Majesty Nefertari has ordered me to follow your highnesses to Memphis to teach your highness, the royal highness, the royal highness, the royal etiquette in temple hymns. She emphasized the word temple hymn with great emphasis. Even when she said this, her expression did not change. The first sight of her maid Lin Ya, who had just seen her, shuddered. At that time, she remembered the punctuation of the hymns in the morning. So, it was because of what happened in the morning that the court lady was attracted. At that time, one of them could not help but pinch Amónhotep on the soft flesh on his waist, making him grin. Amónhotep felt very aggrieved. Why did his little wife, who was still so affectionate last night, start to grow claws the next day? Here is a good news that lived up to everyone's expectations. I cut myself while cutting vegetables. There was a big cut on my hand. I am typing with difficulty and crying in the storm. Chapter 206 Painful class begins. The lady-in-waiting's expression changed now. Her eyebrows were furrowed, and her hands fumbled in the air twice, but found nothing. It made people wonder if she was looking for a tool to hit someone. Obviously, there was no tool, but it was not Tunia's style to do nothing. Your Highness, you abuse your husband like this outside. This is not the behavior of a person who knows etiquette. She frowned and shouted sternly. Abuse. Mistreatment. Lin Ya was frightened by her and retracted her hand. Oh my God, are all the ladies in waiting so fierce? How terrible! Exclamation mark. In fact, what Tunia said was still mild. She said this with consideration for the fact that they were about to get married and the princess had never received a normal royal education. Seeing that the situation was not good, Amos did not care whether Thutmose got off the boat or not. He just ran away. That? Yeah. I wish you and the third brother a pleasant journey. I will leave first. Before Lin Ya could react, the voice attracted Tunia. She turned her head lightly and saw Amos coming down. Her brows frowned again. Royal princess, shouting outside, is this what I taught you? I will pay attention next time. I will leave first this time. Under the high pressure from the palace lady, Amos paused, and then retreated quickly. The word walk was not applicable. To be precise, it should be running. The dust rose up in a puff of light smoke behind her. She ran forward, guessing that Tunia must be scolding her for not having manners in public. Yeah, I'm sorry, I can't handle this woman. You can only pray for your own good luck. This is a woman that even Amos is afraid of. After a face-to-face meeting, Lin Ya made a judgment. So, it means that the imagined good life of eating and sleeping after arriving in Memphis does not exist? The female official sent by the queen could not be driven away, but I didn't know when she would start studying. Perhaps, she could relax a little during this period of time on the road and treat it as a vacation. That? Lin Ya paused, not quite sure how to address the person opposite her. Normally, she should address her as sir, but now it was different, and she didn't know what her name was. Tunia, my name. Tunia saw her intention and spoke coldly. Tunia, when does our schedule start? Let's talk about it when we get there, please. Exclamation mark. Lin Ya didn't want to learn such boring things while getting seasick on the boat. She was afraid that she would vomit. Speaking of which, this was also her disappointment. This was the third time she had learned etiquette, and the second time she had learned religious scriptures. She had always thought that she could get by with procrastination for a day, and that the days of being a queen were still far away, and she had plenty of time to study, but she didn't expect that this would be her retribution. Today. Tunia looked indifferent and serious. As Tunia's words fell, Lin Ya felt that the sky above her head had collapsed. Tunia, go back. I think you are not needed here. The savior has come. Amónhotep frowned and spoke. Lin Ya shrugged and half of her body shrank behind him. Your Highness Amónhotep, this is the wish of Her Majesty the Queen. Tunia did not move. I know Ya still has many shortcomings, but this matter will be taught by the priest of Ta after arriving in Memphis. Tunia was famous for her strictness. If possible, Amónhotep's ideal teacher should be a scholar like Busiri, but obviously the latter would not go to Memphis. Ken was Busiri's career. Your Highness, I am the person appointed by Her Majesty the Queen, and I am also the priest of Amon. The main belief of this country is Amon or Ta. I think you are very clear about this. Her Majesty asked me to convey that if Her Majesty the Princess cannot maintain the royal manners and show full respect to the gods, then the agreement she and Her Majesty Amos have reached with you may need to make some changes. Are you threatening me? Amónhotep raised his eyebrows and said coldly, Tunia dare not, but Your Highness, I think, maybe no one except me can teach a princess that Her Majesty the Queen is satisfied with. Tunia did not retreat because of the boy's change of face. Instead, she changed the subject and put the facts in front of him. What she said was right. Except for the strict Tunia, Nefertari did not trust anyone to teach a qualified princess. Before this, someone had told Nefertari that Busiri was Lin Ya's teacher, which made Nefertari doubt Busiri's teaching. She firmly believed that only Tunia, who had never let her down, could accomplish this task. Ya was indeed a little lazy. Tunia's words made Amónhotep waver. He knew better than anyone that Amos was not in good health. After Mut, the country urgently needed a mature queen. Amónhotep's silence represented his concession. Tunia was satisfied and instructed the entourage to load her luggage onto the ship, making the ship's waterline deeper. The ship sailed away from the shore, carrying the newlywed prince and his wife to a new place for them. The flooded Akach flood grew wildly, and the Green River water flooded the fertile fields on both sides of the dock. The scenery along the way was different from Lin Ya's last trip to the north. The river widened and the water level rose. The trees that were not aquatic plants were submerged underwater, leaving only a green treetop exposed above the water, like a green island with water birds perched on it, occasionally pecking out a fish from the water to eat. Nafir was not very honest on the boat. He ran back and forth like crazy, from one end to the other. When he reached the end, he would jump onto the high bow and sit on the tip for a while, and then repeat the process. Lin Ya often felt that it was in danger of falling off, but she had no time to worry about others now. She was like a clay Buddha crossing the river and could not protect herself. Tunia was watching her eagerly, waiting for her to make a mistake. She was reading a scripture now. The name was simple and rough, called the Great Amon. It was a very basic book. The content mainly talked about the birth, origin, major deeds, family members, etc. of the god Amon, and fundamentally understood this god. Amónhotep, the biggest backer, had been relied on by her. Lin Ya could only accept her fate and do her homework honestly. The wooden board hit the table in front of him with a crisp sound, pulling Lin Ya back from her daze. He looked at Tunia, who was sitting upright, shrank his neck, picked up the paper on the table, and continued to read aloud. The great Amon was born in the primordial sea. He exists in the endless void. He is air. He is order. He is. This thing is no different from Chinese mythology. It's a made-up primordial sea. Amon rose from the sea and created a lotus with other gods. Horus lay in the lotus. Regardless of how the lotus grew in the sea, this conflicted with another myth she knew. Isn't this Horus the biological son of Osiris and Isis? But now he is not? Don't these preachers feel confused? Your Highness. She was distracted again, and Tunia shouted coldly, which scared her again. Tunia, don't you think this origin conflicts with the origin of Abydos? Lin Ya came back to her senses and asked in a low voice, this is not considered lazy, this should be considered studious. Right, Your Highness, this is not what you should ask, what you have to do is to understand Amon, only Amon. Tunia half raised her eyelids and said coldly. The wooden board slapped on the table again. She pointed at the paper roll in Lin Ya's hand. Your Highness, please continue. Didn't you say to ask if you don't understand? Okay, just continue. The god Amon created all things. He is the rising sun that brings life to the earth. Your Highness. Sorry. Lin Ya scratched her head again, apologizing for her distraction. Isn't he the omnipresent air? How come he is the sun again? Your Highness. Tunia took a deep breath and felt dizzy. She had taught so many ladies etiquette, but none of them had such an active mind. Even the most mischievous Princess Amos had never asked so many strange questions. Okay, I got it. I don't need to worry about anything else. I just need to understand Amon, Lin Ya touched her nose, picked up the paper roll and continued. He created light, created fire, and created people. She complained in her heart while reading. This myth is inconsistent. The ancient Egyptians are really easy to deceive. This scroll is smelly and long. When will this kind of life end? Ababa. Yesterday a baby asked me if it was a sweet story. I was silent because I am really prone to spoilers. It may not be that sweet. Just, in the later stage, it should be half glass slag and half sugar. The identity of the heroine will definitely be problematic. Then in the evening, I discussed the subsequent plot with my friend. I asked her if she thought it was B or he, and she said it was he. So, put on a bulletproof vest first. We will be together, but it is not the traditional he. In the process, someone may hand me a razor blade. I will run away first and code the next chapter. It is really painful to have no manuscripts saved. Chapter 207 Map. Your Highness. Once again, she was yelled at for being distracted. Lin Ya simply stopped reading and threw the paper roll back on the table. Tunia, I think we'll stop here today. She couldn't study normally, but she wasn't in a daze just reading like today. It was inevitable for a boat to shake on the water. It was afternoon and the sun was very strong. She couldn't open her eyes. In addition, she almost didn't sleep all night. Not only was her body sore and painful, but her mind was full of mush. I didn't sleep well last night. I will definitely do it tomorrow. Don't worry, I keep my word. After saying that, she turned around and left without waiting for Tunia's reply. What was she waiting for? If she still didn't agree, Lin Ya would have to show her what it meant to sleep on the spot. People are like this. You may stay up all night and not feel that sleepy in the morning. You can also play for a while in the morning. But in the afternoon, when the sun is not too hot and shines warmly on your body, you will feel tired. Lin Ya almost floated back to the cabin in 3 steps. In Amónhotep's puzzled eyes, she floated behind him. He was sitting on a recliner reviewing files. He sat upright. There was a large open space behind him, which could accommodate one person. This gave Lin Ya an opportunity. She lay down behind him, put her arms around his waist, arched her head to his back, and used her other hand to pull the paper roll in his hand. She took it out without looking at it, rolled it up and threw it back on the table. "Are you tired?" His hands were empty, but he was not annoyed. He rubbed his hands around his waist twice, as if she had been riding for an afternoon and was tired and numb. "Not tired, sleepy." She hid behind him and spoke in a muffled voice, breathing warmly on his back. "If you're sleepy, take a nap. What about you? I'll read some more files." Amónhotep reached out and stroked her hair twice, and picked up the file that she had treated roughly from the table. "You are not allowed to read it either. Sleep with me." The paper was thrown back roughly again. She pouted, twisted his waist back forcefully, forced him to face her, hooked his neck unreasonably, and pulled down with her hands. It was as if he was not sleepy. His eyes were bloodshot in the morning, so what was he still looking at? Sleep. She saw the young man smiled with his lips curled, and a wicked smile appeared on his lips. His fingers moved, picked up the thin strap on her shoulder, and pulled it to the side a little. This kind of sleep is not that kind of sleep. What is he thinking? Thinking of the absurd things that happened all night last night. Her face suddenly turned red, raised her hand and hid his restless claws, the kind of sleep with eyes closed. She was fierce. "Why don't you change into your nightgown?" Amónhotep pursed his lips, his eyes were full of innocence, full of "I am very pure, you are the one who thinks wrongly." "Thank you, I won't change." Clenched his fist. Who can be blamed for thinking wrongly? Who was the first to be dishonest? He took a deep breath and resisted the urge to hit the delicate face with his fist. He forced his head down and pressed it on the pillow beside him, then covered his eyes with his hands and said viciously, "Sleep." The man nodded twice obediently, but when she was about to close her eyes, a big hand climbed on her waist, and a source of heat came from her waist, numb and itchy. How could she bear it? Pa! A slap came down. Amónhotep put it on stubbornly, moved away, put it on, moved away, put it on. "Are you still going to sleep or not?" She sat up suddenly with red eyes, very angry. "Sleep." Amónhotep squinted his eyes, aggrieved. "I want to hold you while sleeping." The temptation from the most beautiful man in Thebes. Lin Ya swallowed hard, then gritted her teeth. "No." "Why?" He pouted, even more aggrieved, as if he had been bullied enough. "It's hot." Lin Ya lay down. In order to prevent her will from being unsteady, she turned over decisively, left him behind, and didn't look at his expression. Kemet's daytime is hot, and in the room with poor ventilation, sleeping with someone in her arms at this temperature, is this something a person can bear? Sleep. She angrily threw the last sentence and closed her eyes directly. She was really tired, and fell asleep not long after closing her eyes. The sound of even breathing came from the side. Amónhotep silently curved his eyes, raised his hand, gently pressed her hair scattered on the pillow, rubbed it for a few times, and then fell asleep with her. He didn't know how long he slept. When he woke up, he could see the sky full of stars from the window. The scene outside hadn't changed for a long time. Amónhotep knew that the ship had stopped. There was an attendant standing outside the door. When he saw him wake up, he opened his mouth and seemed to say something. He looked at the girl who was still sleeping beside him, stretched out a finger and pressed it on his lips, then waved his hand to stop the attendant from talking and signaled him to wait outside. Amónhotep walked down from the recliner lightly. It was already evening, and the air was a little chilly. He walked down, picked up a cloak from the trunk, and gently covered Lin Ya with it. She moaned, and he was startled, thinking that she was awakened by him. He subconsciously held his breath, but he saw that the person just turned over and turned his face to the other direction to continue sleeping. He was speechless, and a doting smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. Then he turned around and walked out with light steps. "Dendera is here." The usually cold prince walked out of the door with a smile, still the same. The scene was unprecedented, and the entourage stared straight at him. But when he got closer, the smile disappeared again, and he returned to his usual coldness. The entourage rubbed his eyes blankly. "Well, I must have seen it wrong. This must be my mistake. How could the prince smile?" "Your Highness." He was still in a daze, but the master had already walked in front of him, and obviously frowned because of his negligence. "Your Highness, Dendera has arrived." "It's over." He didn't hear what the prince asked just now. "The prince will be angry." The attendant lowered his head, cold sweat seeped from his forehead, and it felt stinging when it fell into his eyes, but he didn't dare to raise his head to wipe it. "Have the priests of the Temple of Hathor arrived?" Amónhotep's voice didn't sound like he was blaming him, and the attendant's heart was relieved. Your Highness, we have arrived. Are we going down now? He looked behind Amónhotep with a hesitant expression. Your Highness, is the princess still taking a nap? The young man hummed lightly, which was considered an answer to his question. When the attendant realized that he had asked something he shouldn't have asked, his heart was lifted up again. Oh my God, what a stupid question he asked. Can I ask the prince's family? Then the attendant continued to ask, but he didn't know what to say. The princess is still sleeping, how can she get off the boat? Nothing, get off the boat. Seeing through the attendant's thoughts at a glance, he turned around and returned to the cabin. Huh? Get off the boat? Isn't the princess still sleeping? Seeing the figure of the young man disappear behind the door, the poor follower finally had time to wipe the sweat from his head. Not only did His Highness not scold him, but there was no expression on his face. He was a little flustered. Was this a sign of settling the score later? He had just been with Amónhotep for a short time. He was Saha's follower before. Saha saw that he was smart and praised him. He took advantage of His Highness's newly married mood and asked him to show his face. But he didn't expect that his smartness was only on the surface. He panicked when he saw the real master. It's too hard to guess the mood of His Highness Saha. I can't guess it. Only after a while, the young man walked out of the cabin again, and he suddenly realized, is that the case? He saw His Highness walking out of the cabin with slow steps. The commoner princess who got married yesterday was curled up in His Highness' arms, covered tightly from head to toe with a cloak. The relationship between the two princes is really good, he muttered absent-mindedly. Yes, it is very good. The moment the prince passed by his side, he heard a light and shallow word. He looked up and caught a trace of Amónhotep's smile that had not faded yet. So the prince can really smile? The night was cool, and the evening breeze blew Amónhotep's hair. The corners of his robe rustled in the wind. Only the girl in his arms, soft and fragrant, slept soundly. Amónhotep tightened his hands and pressed his back against the direction of the evening breeze, protecting her safely in his own world. Go to sleep, the wind and rain outside will never disturb you again. It's over, see you tomorrow, good night, oh I'm so sleepy too. Chapter 208 The Meaning of Dendera. In Kemet, every newlywed couple will arrive at the temple of Hathor the next day, come to her, and beg for her protection to protect their future happy marriage. Hathor is a goddess with a bull head, the god of love and beauty, the wife of Horus, who is in charge of people's love and marriage and is the patron saint of women. Every city has a corresponding Hathor temple, but only Dendera is the center of Hathor's faith. The temple here can be traced back to dozens of previous kings and is the most effective place in the country. So this trip to Dendera is to pray for the newlyweds. Dendera is located downstream of Thebes, and the journey is very close. It can be reached in basically a few hours. The next morning, Lin Ya woke up from the living hall in the temple of Hathor. Seeing the unfamiliar scene that was different from the boat, she was a little confused. Looking at the ubiquitous bullhead decorations around, she thought for a long time before she remembered that she had arrived in Dendera. Yes, Dendera is so close, and she should have arrived a long time ago. A light smile appeared on her lips. Her lover was so considerate that he didn't even want to wake her up after getting off the boat. She slept for a very long time, from yesterday afternoon to the next morning. After waking up, she had recovered her energy after not sleeping well for many days and was full of energy. The boy beside her breathed steadily and slept very well. He lay flat on his back with his hands crossed on his lower abdomen, just like the sleeping beauty in the fairy tale. So, will he wake up if I kiss him? Just like in the fairy tale, the prince kissed the princess awake and then lived a happy life, but this is different, Lin Ya thought wickedly. After all, she was reluctant to wake him up. His usual work intensity was very high, but this was just the tip of the iceberg of all his work. After so many days without going back, there must be a lot of military and political affairs piled up in Memphis. The days on the boat may be his last leisure time. Thinking of this, she felt a little distressed. Aksha was not very old, only 1 year older than herself, but he had already shouldered so much. In the future, the burden of the entire kingdom would be on him. Then, did she really have to muddle along like this? No, he was working so hard, and she couldn't hold him back. Since what Tunia taught was necessary for a queen, she should try her best to learn it, and learn well what she didn't know. She didn't want to be a vine clinging to him, she wanted to be a giant tree like him, standing shoulder to shoulder. She tightened the waist chain around her waist to stop it from jingling, and slowly climbed down from the bed, trying not to make any noise. She tiptoed to the table at a snail's pace, pulled out a piece of papyrus from beside his documents, picked up a pen and wrote a line of words crookedly, then walked back and put it next to his hand. Then she walked out of the room. It was her first time to visit the Temple of Hathor in Dendera. Lin Ya was not familiar with the route, but she thought that Ipt must live next to her, and she must know where Tunia lived. Sure enough, although the living room was large, she met Ipt, who was coming over after turning a corner. She also got up in the morning and planned to come and serve Lin Ya and the others. With Ipt's reminder, she solved the problem of breakfast on the way. She only walked a few steps with a milk cup in her hand, and drank it in a few gulps. At the end, she wiped the milk stains on her mouth heroically and strode forward regardless of anything. This set of operations was smooth and flowing, which shocked Ipt. This lady, how can she be so casual even though she has become a princess? What's wrong? Feeling the gaze of others staring at her, Lin Ya turned around inexplicably and looked at Ipt. Your Highness. Ipt bowed and took the empty milk cup from her hand. You haven't washed yet? Oh, yes, I just got up. It can be seen that her hair is still messy, a bit like a water bird's nest. Are you going to see Lady Tunia now? Are you sure you want to see Lady Tunia like this? Please take me to wash. Fortunately, someone reminded her, otherwise if she appeared in front of Tunia like this, she would probably be scolded before she even started studying. Tunia likes quietness and lives on the other side of the temple. Lin Ya followed Ipt and turned a long way to reach the destination. In fact, Hathor's goddess Tunia didn't need to come at all. She only needed to wait on the boat for them to finish praying and go back, but considering that this prayer would last for many days, she also chose to stay so that she could teach Lin Ya more conveniently. When the sun rises, Amon-Ra appears in the sky on the sun boat, bringing life to all things. When night falls, Amon-Ra returns to the boundless underworld on the sun boat, bringing light to the dead. This is a passage that has obviously been integrated. Here, Amon is no longer just Amon. He has transformed from a chaotic and formless god, combining with Ra, the main god of the entire Kemet before, to become a brand new god, Amon-Ra. Lin Ya was so devoted that she actually felt sleepy as soon as she read, but she suppressed her sleepiness and read. If she felt dizzy, she would smell the mint leaves in her hand to refresh her mind. Although she still hated studying as before, her mood was different now. She was no longer studying for Nefertari's satisfaction, but for herself, for her and Amónhotep's future. Originally, Tunia had been prepared for this after she ran away yesterday under the pretext of being in trouble. She had been prepared for the next few days. This princess would not be too obedient and would have to fight a protracted war. Unexpectedly, she came so early today. She had no objection to all her arrangements and her attitude towards learning was much more serious. This made Tunia feel relieved and a little worried at the same time. She didn't know how long this attitude could last. Lin Ya still didn't know all the characters. Because of the Kemet grammar, many words had completely different meanings if they were placed in different positions. In addition, the scriptures Tunia provided her were very mixed. Some of them were written in pictographic characters, and some were written in simple sacrificial characters. Pictographic characters were better. She mainly studied this type. Sacrificial characters were difficult. She had never studied them. Judging from the shape, they were indeed simplified pictographic characters, but some were too simple and it was impossible to tell what was what. When reading this type, she was just guessing. After all, she really intended to study this time. She completely forgot that Tunia was sent by Nefertari. Tunia was not surprised by her behavior. A few hours passed quickly, and the two of them got along so well that they really looked like an ordinary teacher and student. Your Highness, the time has come. You should go to pray for the wedding with His Highness Amónhotep. The sun was a little strong. Tunia looked up at the sundial outside the door, and turned back to remind Lin Ya, who was reading quietly. Oh, yes, you still need to pray. Lin Ya raised her head from the pile of straw rolls, rolled up the one in her hand at a very fast speed, tied it with a separate red rope and put it back, and knocked her head. How could she forget something again? How could she forget such a thing? Missing the time is disrespectful to the gods, and such things are taboos in Kemet. I'll come again in the afternoon. No need, Your Highness, you don't have to come these days. Tunia said lightly, and she said this with a blank expression. Lin Ya looked at her in surprise. What's wrong? What am I not doing well enough? Did she get off the book just because she was afraid that she would not learn? She stopped teaching after just one day? No, you did a great job today. It is because you did a great job that I don't have to worry about the progress later. The blessing days these days are very important to you. I hope you can seize this opportunity and bury the hope of the kingdom in your body. Since she has already shown an attitude of studying hard, Tunia doesn't need to hold her too tightly. To put it bluntly, this time the prayer is to use the power of Hathor to make the princess successfully conceive a royal heir, and then give birth safely and smoothly. You still have to grasp it carefully. Tunia said it obscurely, but Lin Ya heard it clearly. Her face flushed instantly. Isn't this kind of thing very private? Why did she say it so naturally? Why does everyone want her to give birth to a child quickly? The next chapter is being coded and will be posted later. People with procrastination will never start writing before 8 o'clock. Chapter 209 Children. She walked back to the living room quietly. Her sleeping beauty was still sleeping soundly, with a note she left behind resting on her fingertips. Even her sleeping posture had not changed. The sunlight shone into the room through the window. Nefer was sleeping soundly on the pillow where she had been lying before, with his body curled up into a small ball. The tips of his fur were the color of sunlight. His tail was furry, and he was not very honest even when he was asleep. It was unknown whether he had dreamed about something or had not slept at all. His tail was fluttering from time to time. There were still nearly 2 hours left before the time for the blessing, so there was plenty of time. Lin Ya did not want to wake Amónhotep up yet, for fear that Nefer's movements would disturb the beauty's sleep. She thought about it, stretched out her hands, and planned to move Nefer to a new home and let him sleep somewhere else. But she made a mistake. She didn't go around, but bent down from Amónhotep's side. Good boy, Nafi, let's go sleep somewhere else. She whispered, her fingertips just about to touch the warm hair that had been exposed to the sun, but before she could do so, the world spun around, and she couldn't help but let out a cry. A big hand climbed on her waist at some point. The owner of that hand had woken up long ago, when she entered the door, or even earlier, when she woke up, because the light in those eyes was so hot, without the haziness of just getting up. Amónhotep used a little strength in his hand and brought her to the bed. The two of them were in a call in an instant, and the small ornaments on the waist chain collided, making a pleasant sound. The movement was too big. When Lin Ya fell down, she accidentally pressed Nefer's legs. Nefer screamed and jumped up from the pillow. The pupils in his cat's eyes were dilated. He hissed a few times as if in protest, jumped off the bed and jumped onto the windowsill. Kemet's windowsill is always very high, almost at the height of a person's head. This action may be very simple for other cats, but it is particularly difficult for Nefer. The two fat front paws clung to the windowsill, and the hind legs kicked the wall several times before barely climbing up. Standing on the windowsill, it looked at the man and woman lying on the bed who disturbed its sleep and were hugging each other at the moment, then snorted angrily and jumped out of the window. The process of its exit was not very smooth either. Lin Ya swore that she heard a thump sound similar to a heavy object falling to the ground, followed by the sound of small stones rolling down, and then there was a familiar cat scream. Nefer's actions obviously pleased her. Normally, she would have been embarrassed to be pressed down by Amónhotep, but now she was giggling non-stop. Don't laugh. She didn't blush, was not ashamed, and didn't respond. Instead, she was laughed at by other things. This realization made the proud Amónhotep a little angry. So he lowered his head and bit her soft lips to vent his anger, like a cute and fierce little beast, who wanted to bite but couldn't bear to break his favorite toy. This move was successful. The girl under him stopped laughing. She was stunned, her eyes were round, and she raised one hand to cover her red lips that he bit. Then after a while, a fierce light flashed in her eyes, and she scratched him twice without giving up. Amónhotep. Are you a dog? Why do you bite people just because you don't agree with them? No, he didn't even say anything, he just bit them. Her nails were not long, and they were more like tickling him. He frowned slightly, then put the hand in his palm and closed it. I'm not a dog, I'm Aksha. Amónhotep felt very aggrieved. Yea called him a dog and stopped calling him Aksha and called him by his full name. She was actually angry with him. Lin Ya was so angry that she wanted to laugh. She stretched out a fingertip from the hand he held in her palm and poked his chest again and again. Aksha? You still say? Didn't you make up this name to trick me? You're right, you're not a dog. You are obviously a fox, and the most cunning one. Lin Ya was sure that it was only after she had been with him for a long time that she realized how perfunctory he was in naming this. This was clearly the brand name of the beer he drank that day. Whenever she thought of this, she got angry. She took his hand back forcefully, leaving a circle of shallow saliva marks on his fingers. Suddenly bitten by someone, Amónhotep's eyelashes trembled and he slightly raised his eyebrows. He was so angry and yet he bit people, and after biting people, he was reluctant to bite hard. How could this be anger? The boy stretched out his hand and let her bite him obediently, but she couldn't do it. She pushed his hand aside with a lack of interest and raised her hand to his neck. "Why did you bite me?" Amónhotep was silent. What to say? Was he going to tell her that it was because you ignored me? "Don't bite me next time." She pried open his teeth and pressed his pointed fangs hard with the tip of her thumb. "If you bite me again next time, I will use a dwarf to grind down all your teeth." As she spoke, she rubbed it with her thumb twice, simulating the situation of the dwarf, but it changed after a while. The person who had opened his mouth obediently closed his mouth. "Open your mouth." She shook her head. "Open your mouth. If you don't let me go, I'll be angry." She retracted her fingers and used Amónhotep's pillow to wipe the liquid on it twice, and successfully saw the face of a certain misophobic boy tremble. "Where have you been?" He lay down, stretched out his hand to hold her waist, and held her in his arms. Her waist was soft, and she looked like a petite plush doll in his arms, making people love her. He put his face on her shoulder, feeling wronged. "Did I leave a note for you?" She sighed, pulled his head down, and then turned around and lay face to face with him. "But I want you to tell me in person." Amónhotep's pair of brown and black eyes blinked, with a moist luster in them, as if the gods had sealed a lake of water into his eyes, making people fall into it after taking a look, and never be able to get out of the shore again. "Well, I went to study with Tunia, had breakfast, and washed up. When he got here, Lin Ya found that his sleeping beauty had woken up long ago. His clothes were no longer the same as he saw in the morning. His hair was combed neatly, and the armbands on his strong arms shone brightly, and the scarab rings on his fingers sparkled. "Aksha, are we here to pray because we want to have a child as soon as possible?" She rubbed her fingers on his armband twice, then frowned and said in a muffled voice. "Child." Her expression made Amónhotep's heart tighten. He held her hand and tested carefully. "Yeah, don't you want a child?" He never told her the premise of this marriage because he didn't want to put pressure on her, but now that she asked this question, if she really didn't want to have children, should he tell her about the agreement with his father? Will there be another premarital dispute? He knew that she had her own ideas and had made concessions, but in order to be with a person she loved and to continue this marriage, the two of them had to compromise and give in. There were still many things they had to do. "Well, it's not that I don't like children. We are still so young and are not ready to be parents at all." She hesitated for a moment and said slowly, looking at his slightly frowned eyebrows, stretched out her fingers, and slowly smoothed them like stroking Nefer's hair, "But if we have a child, I will definitely learn to be a good mother." He opposite him showed a little relaxation. She smiled slightly and took the initiative to offer her lips. "I believe you, and you will be the best father by then." Lin Ya didn't want to have a child too early, but in this ancient era, no matter what measures were taken, it would not be 100% safe. If that child was willing to come, she would not let him go. That was their flesh and blood, with the blood of both of them flowing in his body, and it would be a treasure that no one in the world could compare to. The white sheets were pulled up, and Amónhotep's eyes seemed to be filled with the beauty of the whole spring. Is that so? He also believed that he would be the best father in the world, because that was the child born to him by his beloved Ya. "Amónhotep, that's it? You want it just because you have it? You underestimate me too much, isn't it simple? I was nervous for nothing." "Lin Ya, Amónhotep. What did you say?" "Meng, Fuaning, wife, don't be angry, take care of yourself. When I signed the contract, I was afraid that I couldn't support so much in the later plot, so I wrote no less than 400,000. Then I found that I underestimated my strength. The big strong man is so terrifying, and now he can't stop the car and it's 500,000, but the plot is only halfway through. I'm afraid there will be another 400,000. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelist. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 210 Making a Wish. After a morning of fooling around, they got up again and had to dress up again. Ipt and Saha hurried in and began to tidy up their morning makeup again. Amónhotep's was easy to deal with. Men are naturally less troublesome than women. In addition, he rarely wears wigs. He only needs to wash his hair again, put on eye makeup, and change into a set of neat clothes. Lin Ya was miserable. Kemet regarded wigs as beautiful. In order to avoid being criticized for eating tuna, her original dress today was so meticulous that even the wig strands were extremely detailed. After such a toss, the wig strands stuck out of the hair, and the resin used for fixing was misplaced, sticking part of the wig into a ball. In this case, it can only be washed again, dried, and then braided, which takes a lot of time. There was not much time left before the prayer. After repeated considerations, she braided it directly before it was completely dry and hurriedly put on her morning makeup. The hair that was not completely dry and mixed with a wig generated hot and humid air under the scorching sun. The scalp was hot and itchy, but she could only bear it. As she walked, Lin Ya glared at the boy fiercely. It was all his fault. He had no self-control. It was such a time and he still had to make trouble. This angry expression only earned the boy an ambiguous chuckle. The satisfied look on his face was like a cat that had succeeded in stealing fish. Amónhotep took her hand with a smile in his eyes, put it on his lips and kissed it carefully for a few times. The trembling numbness surged from the place where he kissed to the whole body. Lin Ya's face suddenly turned red again. Well, he was not the only one who had no self-control. The image of Hathor can be seen everywhere in the Hathor temple. The dark blue ceiling was painted with symbols representing the sky. The image of another god occasionally appeared on the murals. That was the husband of Hathor, the god of the sky, Horus, with an eagle head and a human body. They either stand side by side or lean against each other, with their noses touching each other, as if they were kissing. Their intimacy makes everyone who passes by know that the two gods have an extraordinary relationship. It is precisely because Hathor has such a happy marriage that lovers from all over Kemet come to her temple to pray for her blessing and a safe and smooth marriage. Offering Hathor requires a lot of milk and pomegranate juice, and then kneeling before her devoutly to express your wish. If your sincerity touches the gods, your wish will come true. This is actually not much different from the custom of worshipping gods in China. The only difference is that the ceremony of Kemet has a certain magical visual impact. A bloody cow egg is placed in front of the statue, passing the vitality and the twitching muscles to the statue, so that she can speak. The chin of the statue is actually movable. When you finish making a wish, she will nod in agreement or keep silent. This is actually a bit of a trick. Whether your wish will be granted depends on the mood of the priest. The newlyweds who came to pray today are the regent prince and his wife of the kingdom. All the ceremonies are almost just formalities. This wish will definitely be granted. After all, no one dares. The person who presided over the ceremony was the chief high priest of the Dendera Hathor temple, Heft. Lin Ya had also seen her at the last marriage ceremony. She is a very beautiful woman. Although she also has no eyebrows, eyelashes, and hair, the years have not left many traces on her face. On the contrary, because of her long-term companionship with the gods, she has a trace of pure and unselfish air. The brazier was lit, and Helfert casually threw the spices into the burning brazier. A strong aroma floated out, and the misty white smoke filled the palace. The statue of Hathor was blurred in the smoke, and only a pair of eyes made of opal were lifelike, watching the newlyweds at their feet. Praise you, Hathor, who is eternally young. Love blooms in your hands. You make the god Ra smile and save the world. You are the embodiment of love and beauty, dancing in the sands of time. Helf shook the fork bell in her hand and sang Hathor's hymn. The holy water offered to the gods sprinkled from her hands, dripping on Lin Ya and Amónhotep. Praise together, goddess full of glory, please protect their happy marriage, and bless this girl's belly to give birth to the fruit of love and become a great mother. Lin Ya knew that it was not reliable to ask for an oracle here, but in this atmosphere, she still sincerely bowed down in front of the statue of Hathor and made a pious wish. May the great Hathor protect me and the young man beside me. I want to be with him and spend the rest of my life with him. After making the wish, she raised her head. Hathor's face was looming in the smoke, but there was no sign of speaking. Her face was a little gray in an instant, and Amónhotep's expression was not very good either. He clenched his cold hand by his side. There is no god in this world. This may be that the mechanism of the statue is broken. Don't be too sad about this. It was somewhat inappropriate to say this in front of Hathor, the chief high priest, but Heft just moved his eyebrows and said nothing. The little priest kneeling behind the statue was about to cry. The regent prince and his wife came here to seek a blessing for their wedding, but he failed at this moment. The mechanism had been broken for a long time, but it broke at this moment. No matter how hard he pulled the rope in his hand, the statue just wouldn't speak. What should he do? Lin Ya stared at the high statue and shook her head silently. What should have been a smooth sailing thing turned out to be an accident. No matter how he looked at it, it was not a good sign. Do you really believe that there are gods in this world? He looked at her and frowned. If you do, then I will also believe in her existence for the time being. Amónhotep stood up from the ground, his brown eyes filled with dark clouds, looking directly into the eyes of the statue. Hathor, if you really exist, then please know that I, Amónhotep, the son of the great Amos, will be with my wife whether you like it or not. Our destinies are destined to be entangled, whether in this life, the next life, hundreds of years, or thousands of years. His words were sonorous and powerful, and he expressed his wish in an almost commanding tone. Heft was shocked. This was almost a provocation to the gods. Before she could step forward to stop it, she heard a click, and the statue's tightly closed lips actually loosened. The goddess nodded slightly, as if she had promised the wish. The young priest wiped the sweat from his forehead and took a deep breath. The mechanism finally worked. Otherwise, he thought that if it continued like this, His Majesty Amónhotep would probably smash the statue. He didn't know how to exert force to make the mechanism work. Now that it worked, the young priest still didn't dare to believe it. He pulled the string frantically. So Hathor's mouth opened and closed frantically, messy in the smoke. Hey, isn't it working? Then why did it break just now? The opening of the statue made Lin Ya feel relieved. Heft silently stopped talking, pretending that he didn't see Amónhotep's transgression just now. The ceremony was over here. Amónhotep helped his wife up from the ground and left with her hand. Before they reached the door, Lin Ya noticed that Heft had been following them, looking as if she wanted to say something but stopped. So she stopped. Heft, what's the matter with you? Heft paused and walked in front of them. This was a beauty forgotten by the years. Both her appearance and temperament were excellent. Because she had not expressed much expression for a long time, there were not many wrinkles on her face. It was hard to imagine that she was already old. Is Busiri okay? A blush appeared on her always cold face. She spoke lightly, and her voice was clear and moving when she was not singing praises. Busiri. Lin Ya was stunned and felt a little unbelievable. Heft's performance showed that she had a close relationship with Busiri, but I didn't hear that Busiri was married. Could it be that the beauty was in love with him? Busiri didn't look outstanding. He's fine. Amónhotep nodded and answered her question. That's good. Heft nodded, then sighed softly, not sure if it was out of longing or something else. In the late stage of laziness and procrastination, the 8 o'clock coder is here, and the next chapter is on the way. Chapter 211 Visitors from the Healing Garden. What is the relationship between Heft and Busiri? When Heft walked away, Lin Ya immediately shook Amónhotep's arm, her face full of gossip. Former lovers. Amónhotep raised his hand and pinched her nose, looking helpless. Former? Then why didn't they get together? My goodness, she was Busiri's lover, so why didn't they get together? Heft didn't look like she didn't like him. Because Busiri left without saying goodbye. Leaving without saying goodbye. Lin Ya was shocked, and immediately imagined a touching love story. Could it be that Busiri was determined to serve Horus, and Busiri chose Horus, so he abandoned Heft? But can't priests get married? That Demeses was so fickle that many girls fell into his trap and tried their best to marry him. Busiri doesn't want to be bound by family and doesn't want to form a family with Heft. Amónhotep rubbed her hair with a smile and explained softly. Is Heft still in love with Busiri now? Yes, she has never been married. Did Busiri cast a spell on her? He is so ugly. Yeah, Busiri was very famous when he was young, and he is not as ugly as you say. He said with a smile, Heft is so beautiful, I think Busiri doesn't know what is good for him. No man is a good thing. Lin Ya said angrily, such a good lover can't make him settle down? He deserves to be single for life. But yeah, you said no man is a good thing, doesn't that include me too? Amónhotep chuckled and kissed her hair, with a strong sense of grievance in his words. Yes, she scolded her husband, but things are unpredictable, who knows what will happen in the future? Thinking of this, she felt a little bitter in her heart. Aksha, will you stay with me forever, never betray me, and never leave me? There were a few dots of confusion in her eyes. She let him hold her in his arms and kissed the corner of her lips gently. I will stay with you forever, never betray you, and never leave you. I promise. He will not be Busiri, never. When Busiri was young, he traveled all over the country, almost every inch of land in the country. He was very talented, frivolous and arrogant. Such a person is actually very attractive. It is not surprising that Heft likes him. It's just that the Wanderer has his heart in all directions and doesn't want to be bound by a woman, so he chose to leave and abandon his lover. But who can say that the Wanderer has not been punished by fate? People who love freedom more than anything else can only be confined to the temple of Horus for their entire lives and serve his gods forever. He became the kind of person he least wanted to be before. And Heft also stayed in the temple of Hathor after that and became the chief high priest here. Just like the gods they worship, Horus of Natan and Hathor of Dendera, the wedding of the gods, seeing each other once a year, loving each other, but never together. On the way back, Lin Ya smelled a special fragrance, which was both fresh and strong. She turned around and looked towards the place where the fragrance came from. Then, a large area of red and white flowers that seemed to spread to the sky appeared in her sight. The freshness came from the plants, and the strong explanation was that the plants were planted too densely. You couldn't see any other flowers except it. What is that? She was stunned and pointed to the tall building surrounded by flowers. The flowers were extremely beautiful, but she didn't dare to think of approaching them at all, because she could see clearly that it was the flower of worship of Kemet, which had multiple functions such as pain relief, hypnosis and calming the mind. Surrounded by such flowers, what kind of place should the building inside be? Healing garden. Amónhotep looked at the place where her hand pointed and frowned, as if that place was some dirty place. Healing garden? What disease is it for? Healing garden, healing garden? Is that a hospital? But why are there so many of these flowers planted around the hospital? The people living there are some abnormal patients. In their words, they are people cursed by gods or haunted by demons. He seemed unwilling to say more. He only glanced at it and pulled Lin Ya away from that place, not letting her take another look. There are so many such flowers planted around the curse of gods and the entanglement of demons. Lin Ya felt that she seemed to know where this place was. But it turned out to be a mental hospital? Back in the living room, Lin Ya couldn't wait to ask Ipe to take off the wig on her head. She was so hot after walking back and forth. The sore and itchy feeling that she deliberately forgot when praying just now all came up. When the wigs were all untied from the braided braids, Lin Ya looked at herself in the mirror and was completely speechless. The wet long hair was tied tightly against the scalp. What would it look like when it was untied? A woman with a huge afro appeared in the mirror. The roots of her hair were raised like instant noodles. From the beginning to the end, her head looked more than twice as big from the back. If the original head was a cantaloupe, it was now a watermelon or a pumpkin. After dipping it in water to unclog it and combing it to straighten it, Lin Ya compromised. The only way to get it straight was to wash it again. She waved her hand helplessly and told Ipe to go down and beat someone. She covered her eyes and didn't want to see the afro herself in the mirror at all. Hey. Hey. Question mark? A strange hoarse male voice came from her ear. She was startled. She raised her head and looked around nervously. Finally, she found a disheveled man outside the window above her head. His hair was very long, tangled with his beard, and his face was invisible. His naked upper body was clearly stained with dirt. He was only wearing a loincloth, and it looked like he had rolled in the mud, covered with the black and yellow mud, and broken into strips. Hey. Hey. Can you give me the snack on your table? The dirty man saw her looking at him and shouted excitedly. He leaned on the window railing with one hand, and stretched his other hand desperately inside, but the window and the table were very far apart, so he could only watch and couldn't eat. Hey. Patient. If you don't want to eat, why don't you give me half? Lin Ya's silence made him a little manic, and he shouted anxiously again, Patient? Who was he calling? Lin Ya looked at him in confusion, then looked at the snacks on the table. Are you calling me? Yes, if not you, who else? Why don't you give me 3? 1 is fine. He put his hand into the railing and waved it in front of her. On the table were the nut snacks that Ipe had prepared for her. Each one was pinched into cone shape, and less sugar was added according to her taste, so that she could eat it when she was hungry. This man didn't look dangerous. He just wanted to eat a few snacks in one bite. So, let's give it to him? Lin Ya hesitated for a moment, then stepped carefully on the table to bypass his hand and put it on the other side of the window. In this way, he could also get it, and there was no need to worry about him catching her. The dirty man seemed to have been hungry for a long time. He grabbed it and stuffed it into his mouth. His movements were so fast that the whole plate of snacks disappeared in a short while. He didn't even let go of the snack crumbs on the plate. He dipped his fingers into his lips and licked them. It's not delicious. It has no taste. When he finished eating, he burped, frowned, and then looked disgusted. You ate my food, and you said it was not tasty? It's good enough to give it to you, okay? Besides, you've already finished eating. Don't you think it's too late to say this? My fellow patient, although your food is not very tasty, it at least fills my stomach. I will reluctantly tell you a shocking secret. He turned his face mysteriously, lifted the dirty long hair that was covering his face, and showed a pair of amazingly bright eyes. Lin Ya was bewitched by his gaze, and actually moved her face closer to listen to what he was going to say. I dug a hole in the northeast corner of the healing garden. Question mark? What kind of secret is this? After the man finished speaking, he jumped out of the window lightly, and then disappeared into the depths of the woods. Lin Ya sat down inexplicably. He disappeared so quickly that if there was no empty plate left on the windowsill, she would have thought it was a hallucination. Returned from fetching water, she turned her head and looked at herself in the mirror, speechless. The patient in the healing garden just now was clearly a mental patient. He called himself a fellow patient. Did he think that she was also a psychopath with this look? Too much? What is this flower? I won't tell you. Those who understand will understand. I won't. I will use the word divine flower in the following text, which is the sequelae of the seal. In fact, it is really a sacred flower in ancient Egypt, but humans have not done anything good with it. Chapter 212 Hunting Competition. After a short stay in Denderah for a few days, Lin Ya and her group once again boarded the big ship to Memphis. This time, there would be no more stops on the way. The sun shone on the river, creating ripples. Reeds grew on the place where the field was originally, and green aquatic plants floated on the river. The oars passed by and clung to them tightly. After a few swings, they were thrown out again, and finally swirled away. The morning class had just ended. Lin Ya passed by the cabin and saw Amónhotep handling official documents in it. Thutmose stood beside him, and they were discussing something fiercely from time to time. She paused, then turned and walked to the bow. He always had so many official documents and things to deal with. It seemed that she was the only one who was so idle. The big ship pushed away the river water, rippling with waves. She looked at the water under the boat and fell into deep thought. The boat had been sailing for another day. She had something on her mind, and she didn't know how to talk to Amónhotep. As long as she moved a little further, Abydos would be in front. That was where Gnu stayed. She wanted to see Gnu's tomb in her eternal home. The funeral was still a long time away, but she would not have time to take a look at it by then. Everyone on the ship was eager to return to Memphis. The people who led there had been gone for too long. She didn't know how to start, how to stop everyone for her own selfishness. The most common phrase on Thutmose's lips every day was to return to Memphis. Even Saha's eyes sparkled when she mentioned Memphis. She knew that even if she didn't go, Amónhotep would definitely arrange Gnu's funeral properly, but she still wanted to go and take a look in person. She thought that she should do something for Gnu in person. The hippopotamus in front of her let out a long cry. Lin Ya was startled and patted her chest to breathe smoothly. She felt her shoulders sink and an arm was wrapped around her waist. Such intimate gestures have happened from time to time since they were together. She leaned back as usual, found a comfortable angle in her arms, and then held the arm around her waist. Are you done? Frightened by the hippopotamus. They spoke at the same time. Lin Ya was stunned for a moment, then nodded gently, a little bit. The young man's breath was as sweet as orchid in her ear, stroking her back again and again, and his bony hands picked up the bow placed on the bow. Amónhotep took off a ring from his hand and put it on her finger, then held her hand and pulled the huge bow in front of them. The bow was very heavy, decorated with gold flakes and some glittering gems. The shape was very similar to the one Lin Ya had seen in her dream. She didn't know how heavy the bow was. Most of the weight was in his hands. He held her in his arms. They were standing behind the bow together, but she looked more like a mascot, a decoration. He pulled out a matching long arrow from the quiver. It was made of imported hard birch, with a bronze arrowhead and an ivory tail. The arrow was put on the bowstring. Lin Ya felt a strong pulling force. He pulled the bow to the full extent, forming a tight arc. Now, look at the target you want to hit, aim your arrow at it, and then quickly release your fingers like this. His breath surrounded her body. Lin Ya's mind was blank. She couldn't hear what he was saying. All her senses were left with her sense of smell. She could smell the light mint scent on him. The long arrow escaped from the bowstring, leaving a shallow mark on the ring on her finger. She saw the arrow fly out like a meteor, and finally penetrated the hippopotamus's eye, passed through the brain, and pierced out from the other eye. The hippopotamus didn't even make a whine, and fell heavily into the water, with a trace of inconspicuous blood under his body. This move was much more powerful than Tiai's last siege. The scene was somewhat shocking. Lin Ya covered her mouth and exclaimed. The sudden death of her companion caused agitation among the hippopotamus. They rolled and roared in the river, and the mud and sand at the bottom of the river were brought up, and the green river water turned black. Amónhotep smiled slightly, but did not put down the long bow in his hand. Hey, Your Highness, hunting hippos? Take me with you. Thutmose's teasing voice came from behind. Lin Ya stepped back half a step and made room for him. Let's compete. He picked up another bow and weighed it in his hand. The weight of dozens of kilograms was as light as a small stone in his hand. Amónhotep raised his eyebrows and turned sideways, so Thutmose stepped forward and stood shoulder to shoulder with him. Your Highness, I think I will hunt more than you. Thutmose challenged. Not necessarily. Faced with his confidence, Amónhotep took an arrow and put it on the string. Seeing this, Lin Ya ran over again and returned the ring on her finger to him. She could see that the function of this ring was to prevent the finger from being hurt by the high speed when the arrow was released from the string. Come on. She clenched her fist beside him and whispered a word of encouragement. She planned to stand back. This was a competition between men. She only needed to watch him from the side and cheer him up. That was all. Unexpectedly, her body lightened and he held her waist. The speed was a bit fast. In order not to hit his hard chest, she tiptoed slightly, but her lips just happened to be pressed on his cheek. She heard the boy's gentle laughter in her ear, and he seemed to be in a very good mood. Stupid, what kind of encouragement is that? This is it. The blush climbed up her face, and she hammered Amónhotep's chest a few times in a reproachful manner. Why is he always like this, so intimate in front of others? Weird. It's embarrassing. Thutmose was suffocated by his move and was speechless. He said in a low voice, Enough? It's time to start, right? There was the rotten smell of love again. He didn't understand what was good about women. How could it be compared to the excitement of shooting? I will win. I don't think so. Thutmose snorted coldly, then turned his head and didn't want to talk at all. The prince was full of spring, and his eyes didn't even give her a single glance. How could he say this to himself? Your Highness, please lend me your husband temporarily. I will return him to you when I win. As the game was approaching, Thutmose took a little time to tease Lin Ya. Lin Ya nodded awkwardly, looking embarrassed. An arrow flew across the sky, and another hippopotamus fell to the ground instantly, splashing huge water in the water. Thutmose exclaimed, Your Highness. You are cheating. This one doesn't count. Did I make you talk too much nonsense? Amónhotep said lightly, and drew out another arrow. He was anxious and hurriedly pulled the bow. Arrows flew out from the bow one after another, and hippopotamus fell to the ground one after another. The two men stood side by side on the bow, and the painting style was a bit weird. Amónhotep was still normal, just standing simply with his feet slightly apart, shoulder width apart, while Thutmose was a bit confused. He made an extremely exaggerated pose, stepped forward, and raised his bow high. That pose reminded Lin Ya of how he's shooting the sun in the TV series. The bow was raised so high, and it was unknown whether it could hit the target. What surprised Lin Ya was that he really hit it, and every arrow hit the target. The hippopotamus decreased one by one, and died in the river. The shallows were dyed light red. The last hippopotamus was shot by both of them at the same time, but Amónhotep was better. His arrow deflected Thutmose's arrow in the process of moving, so that his arrow hit the rough skin of the hippopotamus, leaving only a light white mark. After the game, some followers put down the boat, rushed to the shallows ahead, and then brought back their data. The birch pole was Amónhotep's, and the elm pole was Thutmose's. After the data was counted, The followers came forward to report that the birch pole hit 11 and the elm pole hit 8. The result was obvious. Amónhotep won. Your Highness, please chat first. I'll wait for you in the cabin. Thutmose put down his longbow angrily, looking depressed, but he had to admit it, because even if the 2 bows that Amónhotep sent out first were removed, there was still a gap of 1 bow. Thutmose, that's enough, isn't it? It's a rare hunt and you still want to feed me dog food? Can't you take the game seriously? Are you bullying me because I don't have a CP? Right. Amónhotep, sneer, Amos is waiting for you. Picture, just pretend I didn't say anything. Chapter 213 Return to Abydos. Abydos is ahead. You have been on the boat for so long. I will take you to relax. After asking his followers to deliver the captured hippopotamus to the nearby temple for distribution to the people, Amónhotep turned around and hugged Lin Ya, whispering in her ear. You. A trace of emotion rose in her heart. She turned her head in disbelief, with a layer of tears in her eyes. It turned out that he saw everything. It turned out that he knew everything without her saying anything. He had already arranged everything for her. How could she not be moved? No, let's go back to Memphis as soon as possible. She sniffed heavily, raised her head and kissed him on the cheek. She said in a muffled voice. He was so considerate of her, but he couldn't delay his important matters because of her. It would be the same when he came back later. Why are you crying? I just want to get off the boat to relax. He smiled lightly and wiped away the tears in her eyes with his rough thumb. I really won't go. There are still many important things waiting for you in Memphis. She shook her head and said affirmatively. You know there will be a lot of things to do when you return to Memphis, and you still don't allow me to be lazy. There was a strong doting in his brown eyes, and there was a hint of coquettishness in his words. I will be very tired when I go back, and I will have to stay in Abydos for more than 2 days, so you can just accompany me. Lin Ya was amused by his behavior, laughed out loud, put her arms around his neck, and took the initiative to leave a kiss on his lips. Okay, then I will accompany you to relax for 2 days. He was so considerate that she did not refuse his kindness again, but quietly increased her requirements for herself and her heart. The heavy schoolwork was not enough, far from enough. She had to do well in all aspects, so that she could reduce his burden in the future. He was really too busy, and after being intimate with her on the deck for a while, he turned back to the cabin to deal with important matters, and after he left, Lin Ya rolled her eyes and looked at the bow they had abandoned. How heavy was this thing? They looked so easy to lift it. So could I lift it? If I pulled it alone, how far could I shoot it? Thinking of this, she touched the bow with her hand, held it tightly, and then took a deep breath, intending to lift it. The huge gravity made her waist fall down, and it hit the deck with a loud sound. She stood up and rubbed her sore waist, secretly smacking her lips. Why is this thing so heavy? It's not that she can't lift it at all, but she underestimated its weight just now. So she picked it up again, exerting all her strength, and this time she lifted it up. She drew out an arrow, put it on the string, and then sadly discovered that it turned out to be the most difficult to pull it open. The bowstring and the bow were pulled very tight, and she used all her strength to open a tiny distance. This was already her limit. She pouted and then loosened her fingers. This distance was obviously not acceptable. The arrow fell to the ground powerlessly. Not to mention the target, the arrowhead did not even pass her toes. Well, not only did it not shoot out, but it was blown back by the wind. The next morning, the ship was anchored at the dock of Abydos under the instruction of Amónhotep. Thutmose opposed this trip, but it was useless for him to say anything. Antonia was even more so. When she heard that Lin Ya's wish to go to Abydos was to pray for her dead servant, her eyebrows were tightly furrowed. She had just made progress in her studies and made this mistake again. As a master, she should not lower herself for the life and death of her servants. As a royal family, she should be more careful about her reputation. But again, it was useless for her to say anything. What qualifications did she, a senior servant, have to interrupt the prince's approval? Abydos was even more lively than Thebes. After all, it was the underworld of Osiris. Everyone longed to be embraced by him after death. Everyone had something to ask of him. In the hearts of the people of Kemet, his status was higher than that of Amon. Someone died every day, and whenever someone died, his relatives would come to this sacred place, Abydos. This showed how prosperous it was. Vendors selling all kinds of goods can be seen everywhere in the market. They hold up the amulets in their hands and shout to every tourist passing by, which is very similar to the modern market. Facts have proved that the main way to attract customers is to shout. This iron rule has continued from ancient times to today, and it will never change. The goods sold are mainly various amulets. The jade pillar of Osiris, the scarab of Kemet, the Uzat of Horus, and the ankh representing life can be seen everywhere here. Lin Ya took a short walk in the market. She originally wanted to buy a pass to the afterlife for Gunyu, the Book of the Dead, but when she asked about the price, she felt it was ridiculously expensive. Just this ordinary piece of paper, even the most ordinary one, would cost 3 donkeys. Ordinary people in Kemet would have to work for half a year without food or drink to own this thin piece of paper. Fortunately, she is now a wealthy woman and can still afford such a small amount of money, but she was stopped by Amónhotep. He said that Gunyu is now parked in the beauty house of the temple of Osiris, and the priests there will make her a book of the dead that is more exquisite than any here. The peddler was about to retort when he heard that he would not buy his things, but he immediately lost his temper when he heard the boy in front of him talking about the priests of the temple of Osiris. Those who can park in the official beauty house are not ordinary people, not to mention those made by priests. Even a lowest level priest has a higher gold content than his here. It's just that he is actually a priest and is taking some private work during his off-duty period. It's just that he is not from the temple of Osiris. As the saying goes, every profession has its own specialties. A priest of a small temple is definitely not as good as that of the temple of Osiris. Looking at their exquisite clothes, the vendor felt that even if the price was cheaper than the other side, they would not buy their own. The final result was that after walking around the market, they did not buy anything. That's not right. Lin Ya bought a pomegranate, but only one, and broke it into 2 halves. The 2 of them ate it while walking around. Thutmose followed behind and felt his teeth ache. He bought an apple and ate it one bite after another, with juice splashing everywhere. After coming out of the market, Lin Ya decided to take a look at the tomb that was being built for Gunyu. In the culture of Kemet, this is a very important thing. Most people start preparing for this matter before they die. It will not be completed until the person dies, and then the eternal body will be buried in it, so that the dead can be reborn in the tomb and start a new life. It's just that Gunyu was so poor during her lifetime that she had no wealth to take care of her affairs after death. So from her death until now, all things have been taken care of by people sent by Amónhotep. It would be a lie to say that she was not touched. Lin Ya understood that he had no obligation to do this. He treated his servants so well because he loved her. What else could she do? Of course, she would return his love with double the love. The tomb of Gunyu is not hastily dug in these days. Instead, Amónhotep spent a lot of money to buy a ready-made tomb from a wealthy businessman. The businessman was reluctant to sell it, but the price he offered was too tempting. The businessman pursued profit, and after weighing the pros and cons, he happily sold his residence 100 years later. The workers in the tomb were busy erasing the murals on the wall and applying new colors. A part of the murals had been painted. To be honest, Gunyu in the painting was only somewhat similar to her, but the kind look in her eyes made Lin Ya realize at a glance that it was her. Only she would show such a look to her. In the painting, she wore gorgeous dresses, enjoyed the service of many servants, and had a lot of jewelry hanging on her body, which made Lin Ya feel ridiculous and want to cry. She had never had these in her life, but she got everything in such a painting. It was such a ridiculous thing. Chapter 214 Funny. The most eye-catching part of the tomb is a painting of Gunyu and her 2 masters. The noble and elegant Horus sat on a chair on one side with her eyes downcast and a faint smile, while she sat on the other side, with a young Tia wearing the Horus chain on her legs. Without Rhea, they were so talkative and smiling. But all the people in it, fundamentally speaking, no longer exist. These workers are not all workers. A large part of them are professional architects, and there are others who are engaged in tomb-related work. Their professionalism is beyond doubt. They have taken good care of the tomb from inside to outside. Lin Ya looked around and didn't have anything to add. The top of the tomb has been painted with dark blue and golden stars, simulating the appearance of the sky. The main architect responsible for the reconstruction of this tomb took out the drawings of other parts, mainly some murals that have not been painted yet. These will be painted in the future. Of course, Lin Ya will definitely not stay until then. Half of the drawings on the drawings describe life before death, while the other half are the imagined world after death and the tributes to be enjoyed in the afterlife. These are actually beyond the scope. The dark blue tomb ceiling alone is worth a lot of money. Perhaps thousands of years later, when someone opens this tomb, they will think that some great person is buried here. But it seems that people do think so, because in a corner of the drawings describing the life before death, there is a line of words introducing the identity of the tomb owner written in neat hieroglyphs. She served the daughter-in-law of the sun god and the wife of His Highness Amónhotep. After Lin Ya prepared everything for Gunyu, including the little dolls serving in the underworld, amulets made of jade, and exquisite wooden coffins, she did not have the courage to step into the door in front of her. It was the public beauty room of the Temple of Osiris. Behind the open door were beds separated by gauze, and those who had gone to eternal life lay on them. She knew Gunyu was there, one of them. She had a lot to say to Gunyu, but what could she say? Has she gone to eternity? Has she known that she has never been her little master? Then is she still willing to listen to her farewell? Don't go in. Amónhotep held her shoulders from behind, thinking that she was afraid of the scene inside. I don't think she would want you to see her now. He comforted her softly. The people inside should be dehydrated now, and even the outline of their bodies will not be the same as before. Why are you standing outside the door? Aren't you going in? A young woman's crisp voice came to her ears. Lin Ya felt that the voice was familiar, and then turned around and found Shi, who had met her last time. Shi? She asked uncertainly. This might be a person like her. This cognition caused a strong fluctuation in her heart. Shi, this name is so special, it doesn't seem like a local name, so is Shi really the same as she thought? Hey, now that you're here, let's go in. Shi held a wooden basin in her hand, which was filled with a pile of washed flax. Unlike other women nowadays, they all carried it on their heads. Maybe when you have some guess in your mind, you will keep looking for clues to prove that your guess is correct. This subtle difference further strengthened Lin Ya's idea. She removed the last bit of hesitation in her heart and followed Shi's footsteps. Accompanied by Amónhotep, Lin Ya walked into the gate of the public beauty house. Thutmose pinched his nose outside with a look of disgust, but finally followed in reluctantly. There was no way. He had to think about it even if he didn't want to. His duty was to protect the regent prince and his wife. If they were not in front of him, what was there to protect? The gauze separated the beds one after another. There was an lingering smell of blood in the air. The cracks in the floor could be seen with blood stains that had turned black. The priests shuttled between them, doing the work of cleaning the body, which included drilling the nose and taking out the internal organs. Every time Lin Ya walked here, she closed her eyes tightly. Although so, she still inevitably saw a priest taking out a person's organ from the wound in the lower abdomen and throwing it into the basin with blood. There was no need to say much about the shock of this scene, but the priest did not even blink. Lin Ya swallowed her saliva and tried hard not to scream. A strong arm held her head and pressed her into his arms. She heard the steady heartbeat in the boy's chest and finally calmed down a little. Rolls of linen were placed in the corner of the wall, and from time to time a priest came to take one to bandage the body. A considerable number of corpses were buried in the natron pile, covered from head to toe, and dehydrated. Is this Gunyu who was sent in half a month ago? The scene here was clearly like purgatory, but she seemed to be blind and led them around one bed after another, as familiar as walking in her own home. Let me think, it should be this one. She turned over the small sign hanging at the foot of the bed, and then pointed to a bed next to her. Lin Ya was slightly startled, and after seeing it clearly, she looked at a loss. There was nothing to see on this bed, only the high bulge of yellow-white natron, which was piled up like a mountain. Is this Gunyu? What can you see here? Why not find someone to dig a hole in the face? Thutmose poked his head out from behind Amónhotep and said in a muffled voice. Tough. Perhaps he himself knew that what he said was a little wrong. Before Amónhotep finished speaking, he shrank back again. Lin Ya stood in front of the bed, looking at the person buried in natron, hesitant to speak. Shi retreated tactfully, and Thutmose also retreated to a corner where he could see clearly. Only Amónhotep and her were left standing there, holding hands. Gunyu. She stood there for a long time, a somewhat bitter smile spread across her lips, and she hesitantly touched the edge of the bed. Will you blame me now? Blame me for deceiving you, pretending to be your little master, to win your love and care? I am always grateful for your care for me. You are the first warmth I feel when I come here. You are the first person I see when I open my eyes. You are also the first person I say to me, I love you, although you may not need it. Drops of water fell on the edge of the bed. She stood there, crying silently, I'm sorry. Hey, sorry. The sentimental atmosphere was broken by someone. Lin Ya wiped her tears and turned back with tears in her eyes. She saw Shi running over in a panic. What's going on? What sorry did she say? That? I made a mistake. Gunu is on the bed behind you. Shi shrank her neck awkwardly, and then shook the small sign in her hand. I just remember that she was placed nearby. And the name of the bed next to her is almost the same as hers. I made a mistake. It was only when I went to organize the amulets just now that I realized something was wrong. I don't know if it's too late to say it. Lin Ya looked at the sign beside the bed with doubt. It turned out to be a mistake. This person's name is Gunut. How can it be similar? The length of the name is different, okay. She looked back at the bed behind her, and then at the bed in front of her, feeling speechless. She took a deep breath, looked up at Xie across from her, and felt her temples throbbing non-stop, and she was so angry that her liver hurt. Ms. Xie, are you a fool? She almost shouted this sentence. If this is not a fool, what is it? Question mark. Who can do such a thing? It's like you go to the grave of a relative who has no tombstone, and cry in the dark for a long time, and then the person who leads you tells you that you are crying in the wrong place, and the one next to you is the right one. That's it? Question mark. That's it? Question mark. Xie, you can't blame me for this. I don't know many words. Lin Ya, okay. Me too. Chapter 215. Debi? This word is not spoken in Kemet, but in another strange language. You can hear two separate words. As soon as the word came out, everyone was shocked. Amónhotep and others were just wondering what the word meant. But Shi was different. His mouth was bigger than an egg and his eyes were wide open. No way? Did he meet a fellow villager? She was stunned. After she reacted, she was like a cat whose tail was caught. She bit her fingers and turned around anxiously. She didn't know how many times she turned. Lin Ya felt her eyes were a little dizzy. She stopped and took a few mysterious steps to Lin Ya. Her speed was so fast that Amónhotep almost thought she was an assassin and stretched out his hand to stop her. She almost fell to the ground, but she didn't care. She looked straight at Lin Ya and then slowly said, 3721. Although she said this in Kemet, the meaning was self-evident. Lin Ya was also stunned, and then responded with the same expression, stammering, 47. 32. After she finished speaking, she felt something was wrong, and then shook her head and spoke again, no, 47 is 28. In fact, she didn't say the word Debbie deliberately to test, she just thought of this word subconsciously, and didn't know how Kemet would say it in a hurry, so she used Chinese. But she didn't expect what an unexpected gain is. This is it. As the saying goes, when fellow villagers meet, their eyes are filled with tears. Lin Ya tried to pry open Amónhotep's arm, but after a few attempts, she couldn't do it, so she simply crawled out from under his arm. She hugged Shi tightly. In the center of the public beauty room of the Temple of Osiris, the two young girls hugged each other tightly, crying and laughing, like crazy. They kept crying and shouting, 1 + 1 = 13927. What kind of weird things are they talking about? Amónhotep was confused at first, but after listening to a few more sentences and calculating in his mind, he found that this was actually a mathematical formula. Is this a trick for a fast algorithm? It's incredible that the result can be obtained so quickly. The corners of his mouth were raised with a faint smile, and his eyes were full of pampering and pride. Maya is really the best, and she is also very talented in arithmetic. If Lin Ya heard this, he would probably cry. The two girls had finished talking about the 9981, and then talked about Tang Monk's journey to the west. There were traces of what was said before, and if you listened carefully, you could understand what was said. Now you really couldn't understand anything. Tang Monk? It sounds like a person's name. Who is this person? They seemed to feel that the atmosphere was a little wrong. After talking about Tang Monk, they stopped talking silently. Some things are better for the two of them to know. In a cold foreign land, you meet someone who comes from the same place as you. She understands what you are saying and knows all your strange ideas. This feeling is really wonderful and beautiful. After crying and laughing, Shi blinked at her, then knocked her head, turned his back and walked out. Lin Ya understood that Shi was telling her to go find her later. In fact, if she didn't say it, Lin Ya would also like to take some time to meet her properly. This episode had completely dispersed all the sadness in her heart. She turned around and faced Gunu's real body. There was no point in repeating what she had said before. Suddenly, she realized that she had nothing to say. After standing for a while, she pulled Amónhotep beside her and smiled at the pointed bag on the bed. "Kunyu, didn't you always say that I and Aksha are a good match? We are together and married," she said excitedly, as if the person on the bed was still alive, as if she was really introducing her husband to the elders, instead of facing the bed full of natron. As she spoke, the sadness in her heart came up again, but this time she didn't cry anymore. She solemnly promised to the bed, "I will definitely find the murderer who killed you and avenge you. Even if he hides at the end of the world, I will definitely pull him out," she said in a low voice, with a hint of uncontrollable trembling in her voice. Amónhotep was silent and held her hand tightly. "We will find him." He still had no idea who this person was. All the priests who had been to the courtyard that day were secretly arrested by him. However, no matter how they were interrogated, they insisted that they had never killed the old woman. Even when Kemet used the most severe punishment, they were scared and cried, and they just begged him to give them a way to live. Those people said that they were just ordered by Amónhotep Traskea to come over for questioning, and they had never received any orders to kill people. They knew nothing about the assassination outside the city of Ken before. This made Amónhotep feel troubled. If it wasn't them, who else could it be? Who would have such a great hatred for Yea's servants? If it wasn't because of him, was it aimed at Yea? Does this mean that she will be in danger in the future? Various factors made this matter a concern for Amónhotep. He sent people to investigate in all directions for more than half a month, but it was not without results. According to the report of the attendant, when checking the nearby residence, some people said that on the night when the divine marriage ceremony arrived at Nagn, a man in a cloak with unclear appearance came to the courtyard. I can't remember what kind of person he was, but I remember that he had a curved dagger on his waist, and the scabbard was inlaid with various gems, reflecting the light under the moonlight. So far, the first feature of the suspect has appeared. First of all, civilians are not allowed to own such a powerful weapon used in war. The scimitar is not something that ordinary people can own. Even few soldiers in the army will own it. The scimitar is a style made by the Hyksos. It will only be seized from the enemy during the expulsion war. Under normal circumstances, ordinary soldiers of Kemet will not use such weapons. They usually use spears or battle axes. The user of the scimitar is likely to be an officer who has participated in the expulsion war, and the rank is not low. This conclusion can be drawn from the gems inlaid on the blade. Even so, it only further narrowed the scope. There were so many senior officials who participated in the expulsion war, and it would take time to conduct an in-depth investigation. But he thought that day would not be too far away. In the afternoon after dinner, Lin Ya talked to Amónhotep about visiting Shi. She repeatedly acted cute and promised that there would be no accidents, so that he agreed to go alone without any servants. During this period, she even shamelessly sold her chastity and kissed her husband's face again and again, making him dazed. Finally, she agreed and went out happily. In fact, Shi meant for her to enter the village quietly without shooting, but she obviously didn't think so. It was not shameful to meet a fellow villager. Aksha might be suspicious of their relationship, but at least he knew where she went. Anyway, he would never guess such a fantasy. She didn't want to do anything behind his back, not at all. The Temple of Osiris is one of the key temples in the kingdom. The military force inside is no less than that of a small fortress. This is why Amónhotep was relieved that she came out alone. The afternoon sun was scorching, and the sunlight was more scorching than ever before, but Lin Ya didn't care about so much. If she didn't have to take into account the royal etiquette, she actually wanted to run now. She really wanted to see Shi, and she had a lot of things to say. She had been floating in this era for too long and was about to forget that she was actually a modern person. In the middle of the beautiful house she had seen during the day, she saw the person she wanted to see. Shi stood there and smiled at her, then took the initiative to come over and hold her hand, and walked all the way to the back door. She felt the dampness and heat in the other's palm, which was the same as hers, sweat from nervousness. The backyard of the beautiful house is a lush garden. Shi took her into a frame made of unknown vines, and happily pressed her down on the carpet below, with an amazing light in her eyes. Sit down, it's cool here." Fluent Chinese came out of her mouth, and the long-lost accent made Lin Ya's heart jump up immediately. It's really a fellow villager. Shi sat down opposite her, with a burning gaze. "Let me introduce myself first. I am from China in the 21st century. My name is Shen Yai. Shen Yai, I can also recite pi. I will recite it to you. 3.1415926 Lin Ya, yawn. It's getting dark. When will you finish reciting it? I'm so sleepy. People with procrastination are really terrible. It's uncomfortable and I love to get stuck. I will try to revise it tomorrow and send it early. Oh. Chapter 216. Do you want to know the future? Lin Ya finally understood today why the ancients said that one of the 4 great joys in life is meeting an old friend in a foreign land. They chatted from noon till night when the stars rose in the sky. It was only then that Shen Yai's fiancé came to call her back. The conversation ended. The little priest named Amónhotep walked through the flower stand, picked her up from the ground in a very arrogant manner, and asked loudly why she hadn't gone back yet. Only then did they realize that it was getting late. Shen Yai kicked and scratched in his arms, and finally let him put her down. The moment her feet touched the ground, she grabbed his ears. Why are you in such a hurry? I finally met a fellow villager. What can we do if we talk for a while? Like a scolded big dog, Amónhotep lowered his head. If he had ears as long as a dog's, they would have drooped down now. I'm not saying that you can't eat well if you don't go back. Besides, Madame Tia's husband has come to look for her several times. If he wasn't sure that you were okay in there, he would have rushed in to arrest you. He looked pitiful and aggrieved. Lin Ya held her chin and thought, if Amónhotep showed such an expression, she would definitely not have the heart to do it. But Shen Yai was unmoved, and turned her head to one side angrily. It's not that you can't eat if I don't go back. I think you eat better with the old man, so you should marry the old man home. The old man Teddy disliked her nagging and always said that she was ruining his precious apprentice. She also disliked him for being weird and ignorant of the ways of the world, and for teaching old men to be a little old-fashioned. The young man named Amónhotep was obviously not good at speaking. He scratched his head and didn't know what to say. What should I do if my wife and teacher always quarrel? In fact, the teacher didn't dislike Yai as much as he showed. He was just unforgiving with his words. Yai, let's go back. It's too late. Madame Tia needs to go back too. He didn't pronounce the name Shen Yai standardly. In his mouth it became Yai, which instantly added a bit of exotic flavor. When I didn't know about it, I just thought that the name Shi Yai was a little special and didn't sound like a Kemet name. When I knew that this was actually a phonetic modification of Shen Yai, I suddenly found it quite funny. Lin Ya smiled. The other person's husband was already urging them. No matter how reluctant she was, she should let the couple go back. Yai, go back with him. Amónhotep is right. My husband should be anxious too. Although she had said so, Shen Yai still pinched Amónhotep's ear relentlessly. Seeing the young man grimacing in pain, she finally released her claws contentedly, turned around and hugged Lin Ya with a heavy heart. Yeah, it's really not easy to meet you in such a vast sea of people. I don't know when we will meet next time. You are leaving for Memphis tomorrow, right? She was in a heavy mood, and Lin Ya was not much better. She met someone who was close to her in a foreign land, but could only stay there for a short moment. After today, they would be separated by huge distances. As far as her current identity was concerned, the possibility of finding time to reach Abydos again was too low. But fortunately, we have both found our own happiness. Even if we are not around each other, we will not be too lonely. After a short while of sadness, Shen Yai started to smile again. Unlike Lin Ya, she can always adjust her mood quickly and is a natural optimist. You are married, right? Maybe in a short time, you will have your own flesh and blood. In this way, in this era, there will be someone who is truly connected to you by blood. At that time, you will really take root and will no longer feel lonely. She touched Lin Ya's belly and smiled ambiguously, as if there was really a little child living in it. Lin Ya nodded heavily for her optimism. Shen Yai was right. Even if she had never met her, she would never be alone, because she had Aksha. He loved her very much, and she loved him very much. Okay, let's separate. Anyway, I'm here and we'll keep in touch. At last, she patted Lin Ya's shoulder, with a serious face. Maybe when we both have children in the future, we can become in-laws. I believe the children we teach will be the most compatible people in the world. Before Lin Ya could say anything, Amónhotep on the other side complained in a low voice, what if the children we have with them are of the same gender? Shen Yai turned around and glared. Lin Ya subconsciously thought that he was afraid of bad luck again, But Shen Yi unexpectedly did not touch him. She stretched out her hand halfway and smiled awkwardly and retracted it. Although Lin Ya was not an outsider, she still had to save some face for her boyfriend. What are you afraid of? It's not that you can't be gay. King Pepe is gay, so why can't my son be? Shen Yi pouted and said indifferently. Lin Ya felt a chill when she heard it. Gay? It's not that it's not possible, but Aksha might have an opinion. After all, their son may take that position in the future. If the king takes the lead in being gay, the picture seems a bit beautiful. But Shen Yi and Amónhotep are so good looking, and having a son must be good. Two beautiful boys. Tisk tisk, that picture is actually quite desirable. It's okay. If you don't want to be gay, you can just keep having more children. Old Meng and I don't have many relatives. It's more lively with more people. I want to at least have a basketball team. Basketball team? Is it the kind of reserve players or not? It seems that no matter what, it's a lot. Does Shen Yi plan to have more than 5 children? This. Lin Ya looked at her belly and felt horrified. Oh, by the way, I haven't asked you what your husband does? What's his name, Mintumesis? It's Amónhotep. Lin Ya corrected in a low voice. Oh, yes, Amónhotep. I just remember that his name is a bit similar to my old man. It turns out that it's not Mentu, but Hotep. Speaking of which, why are Egyptians so casual in naming? There are Amon and Hotep everywhere. If you shout Amon on the street, 9 out of 10 people will turn back. Fortunately, my old Meng is called Mentu. She sighed and sighed from the bottom of her heart. This name is really ordinary. But Yea's husband is very handsome. He looks much younger than old man. Well, in this case, are they getting married too early? She touched her chin in a serious manner. Who cares? Anyway, it's legal in Kemet. Their children will definitely be good looking. It's right to settle it first. Whether it's the son-in-law or the daughter-in-law, it's a sure win. What does his family do? Shen Yi turned her head and asked. Well, Aksha's father is the king, and he is the regent prince. Lin Ya scratched her head and answered embarrassedly. She had just asked him this, but she didn't reply. Wasn't it a bit rude? Amónhotep. Yes, Amónhotep. Not knowing what was wrong with this sentence, Lin Ya saw that Shen Yi's expression opposite her had changed. It was an expression that she didn't know how to describe. She was conflicted and shocked, and she was hesitant to speak. The third son of Amos? Amónhotep. Shen Yi's eyes widened. Mintuhotep beside her quietly nudged her arm and reminded her, Yi, it's His Majesty Amos. She shook his hand away with great force. Oh, I didn't know that Amos was His Majesty. She turned around and looked at Lin Ya straight in the face. Is it him? Yes, Aksha is the third son of Amos, Amónhotep, born to Nefertari. Shen Yi looked very serious, so Lin Ya replied to her very seriously, trying to be as detailed as possible. Yi, is there any problem with his identity? Thinking of this, Lin Ya's heart became nervous. She looked at Shen Yi without looking at her, frowning and asked. No, there is no problem. Shen Yi looked back at her and swallowed quietly. Yeah. Do you want to know the future? If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 217 His Future. In the previous chat, Lin Ya knew that Shen Yi came to ancient Egypt, but she was not as ignorant as herself. She knew some of the history of Egypt. Her teacher was an avid fan of ancient Egypt. The reason why she traveled through time was because she made a bet with her classmates and secretly tried on the teacher's Anubis mask collection. She knew more than a young man like herself. She knew more than herself, and she could be said to be influenced by novels and knew nothing about the pharaohs except Tutankhamun and Ramses. The future, what will the future be like? What role will I play in history? Will there be my name and image on the murals of the Karnak temple? How many children will she and Aksha have? Will they be happy? Which child will become the pharaoh of ancient Egypt? Where will they be buried? The Valley of the Kings? Or Abydos? All of this was really tempting, but she still smiled and shook her head, rejecting Shen Yi. No, I don't want to know the future. She answered firmly, and Shen Yi's eyes showed a little confusion. Do you really not want to know the future? No, I don't want to. She still shook her head and hugged Shen Yi, Thank you for your kindness, but I really don't want to know the future. If I know the future, my mentality will be affected by what will happen in the future. If it is good, then I will lose the motivation to work hard. If it is bad, I will be restless day and night, always worried about it happening. Only when I have walked through it, will I know its existence. I believe that the future will be written by me, not me running towards the future. I won't ask it to teach me what to do. I don't think I will live in the boundaries of history. Even if God gives me a tragedy, I can definitely rewrite our future with Aksha. She smiled confidently, and this smile infected Shen Yai, so that even though Shen Yai frowned, he still held Lin Ya's hand tightly and agreed with her point of view. Yes, although I don't want to know my future and ending, I want to know how people in the future will evaluate Aksha. Lin Ya smiled and looked at Shen Yai, her eyes full of expectation. Well, he was a great pharaoh who ruled ancient Egypt for a long time. He was diligent and loved the people. The people loved him. After his death, many people spontaneously made statues for him to commemorate him. He was one of the few pharaohs in ancient Egypt who was worshipped as a god after his death. Even his father, Amos, who reunified ancient Egypt, did not do this. Shen Yai paused, looked into her eyes, and answered seriously, "He is very good, really very good." This answer made Lin Ya feel very good. She knew that her Aksha would definitely do his best. There was a subtle sound of footsteps behind her. She turned around and saw that his young man was walking in this direction. He was dressed in white and covered with the moonlight, like a real god. Amónhotep's brows were slightly wrinkled. When he saw her turn her head, he slowly relaxed his brows. He walked over a few steps, held her hand, and with a little effort, hugged her back to his arms, and put on a large cloak, like a treasure that had been lost and found. "It's late at night, why don't you go back? If I hadn't arranged for someone to guard outside, I would have thought you were lost." "Oh, didn't you meet someone very close to you?" I couldn't help but chat a little more. "Let me go first." Lin Ya was a little embarrassed to be intimate with him in front of Shen Yai, and she scolded him in a low voice. But Amónhotep seemed not to hear it. Not only did he not let go, but he hugged her tighter. Amónhotep, Ya's husband. As if he had just noticed that there was a couple in front of him, he raised his head and introduced himself lightly. His tone was flat and calm, but when he mentioned Ya's husband, he raised his voice at the end, bringing out a bit of charm. Shen Yai and Amónhotep nodded awkwardly and introduced themselves. My goodness, Amónhotep was so arrogant when he was young. He ignored two grown men and introduced himself so briefly. If Ya hadn't introduced herself as her good friend, she would have ignored him directly. But don't say it, this arrogant little look is quite good looking. Well, not as good looking as my old man. If my old man had hair, eyelashes and eyebrows, he would definitely be much better looking than this. Shen Yai secretly looked at Amónhotep from head to toe with curiosity. Tisk, 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 are the genes of pharaohs so good? Broad shoulders, narrow waist, long legs, with this figure, the legs are all below the neck, right? These long eyelashes are not much different from when old men had eyelashes. It's all the fault of that stinky old man Tati, who said that orthodox sacrifices must be shaved. No, she will have to argue with him later. Why can't sacrifices have hair? If the son is so handsome, how handsome must a father and mother be? If we calculate the time, Amos will be gone in a few years. She must find some time to ask Lao Meng to take her to Thebes to broaden her horizons and see what the current pharaoh looks like. Shen Yai was daydreaming here. Amónhotep got goosebumps for no reason when she looked at him. He turned his body slightly and looked away, then he felt better. Yai, we are leaving first. I will wait for you to come to Memphis to play with me later. The scene was a little bit wrong. Lin Ya pulled Amónhotep's sleeve twice and said goodbye to Shen Yai. Well, okay, when Lao Meng takes a break, I will definitely ask him to take me there. Shen Yai responded cheerfully, and then waved her hands happily. It was not enough for her to wave by herself, she also grabbed Amónhotep, who looked like he had lost all hope in life, to swing with her. The moonlight illuminated the flower stand. A cheerful girl grabbed an expressionless young man and danced with him below. This scene made Lin Ya laugh. They really matched well, but she and Aksha also matched well. She held the hand of the young man beside her tightly and walked back with him. Places without moonlight are always dark. As she walked, Lin Ya stepped on a large stone. The stone flew up from the ground and pierced through her flip-flops, making a tiny cut on the back of her foot. She cried out softly, and then the pain instantly spread from the back of her foot to her whole body. The stone was not small, and how could she feel good after being hit and stabbed? Why are you so careless? Amónhotep's face was much uglier than hers, as if he was the one injured instead of her. He ignored Lin Ya's stubborn wave of his hand and said it was okay, and directly picked her up horizontally. I'll ask someone to call a doctor, just bear with it. Then he flew away from Shen Yi and the other side. Shen Yi frowned and thought for a moment, then ran to chase the two people in front of her and Amónhotep's shocked eyes. She ran in front, and Amónhotep chased behind, but he didn't wear shoes, so he didn't run fast. He was about to cry when chasing his wife. Who can tell him, what is Yi running for? Why is this stone so piercing? Exclamation mark. After all, Amónhotep was holding someone, and no matter how long his legs were, they couldn't compare to Shen Yi alone. At the door of the beautiful house, Shen Yi finally caught up with him. Hey. Yeah. There was still some distance ahead, she couldn't catch up anymore, so she simply stopped and shouted loudly, then panted heavily. Amónhotep followed and rubbed her back. What's wrong, Yi? Lin Ya poked her head out of Amónhotep's arms and asked in confusion. They stopped. Shen Yi took a few breaths, then walked forward a few steps and got closer. She looked at Lin Ya with a gloomy look. Yeah, if one day you have anything, remember to come to Bidos to find Tati. The old man is an old charlatan. Lin Ya nodded seriously, indicating that she understood, and she seemed to be relieved and watched them leave. Behind Lin Ya, her eyes were filled with thick dark clouds. Yeah, you don't want to hear about your future, but do you know? You don't have a future at all. Amónhotep's wife was not called Tiaya, and he had no children who could inherit his throne. I have no idea why history became like that and whether it will change, but I sincerely hope that what you said is right, and you can really rewrite your future. You will become the queen of ancient Egypt and give birth to your heir to the throne. I hope he has you in his future. But if history cannot be changed, then I hope that when you reach that point, you can turn back, come to Tati, and find the way home. Chapter 218 Pyramids of Sacred Land. Your Highness, the princess's foot has been treated. The temporary doctor, the priest of the Temple of Osiris, looked at Amónhotep's ugly face and said tremblingly. Really? The boy's eyebrows were still tightly knitted, and his eyes were not friendly when he looked at the priest's face. Actually, I think he treated it very well, Lin Ya said while retracting her feet. Oh my god, is this not good enough? How is this foot wrapped? Circles on the left and right, the thickness is almost as thick as the bandages they use to treat mummies. Is this a professional habit? If you take this foot out, others might think that she has suffered a lot of injuries on her foot. In fact, it was just a blue patch as big as a fingernail, and the bleeding spot was only the size of a rice grain. But she also knew that this matter might have nothing to do with the doctor's professionalism, because his initial suggestion was not to even bandage it. Maybe it was a bit uncomfortable for a strange man to hold the feet of his beloved wife. Amónhotep thought about it and waved his hand to let the doctor leave. The priest who acted as the doctor took his leave in a low voice, turned around and silently wiped the sweat oozing from his forehead. It is really not easy to be a doctor these days. It is safer to wrap the corpse. After watching the doctor leave, Amónhotep once again picked up a piece of soft bandage. Lin Ya shuddered, took her foot back directly, sat cross-legged, pressed it under her legs, and shook her head like a rattle. No, I think it's too thick. It seemed to be a little thick, so he lowered his head and untied the top layer. As the bandages were untied one by one, Lin Ya's feet instantly turned from a bun into a dumpling. But it seemed to be still very thick and pressed her feet, so she secretly took another layer while Amónhotep was washing up, stuffed her feet back into the sheets before he came back, and sat down obediently. What did you do? Smiled so flatteringly. Amónhotep had just taken a bath, and his black hair was still dripping with water. He leaned lightly against a pillar beside him, his robe loosely draped over his body, and water dripped from his head, dripping into the open collar, and then down along the delicate collarbone, leaving a little wet mark on the robe. He said this softly, with a hint of temptation in his words. Lin Ya swallowed her saliva in a cowardly manner. This person is too charming. Just standing there, doing nothing, is so tempting. She pulled the bedsheet up to cover half of her face, then stretched out a paw and patted the empty space beside her. It's getting late, let's go to bed. Her act of invitation obviously made Amónhotep in a good mood. He chuckled and walked over, took off his outer robe, and gently got into the bed sheet. He lay down beside her and then put one arm around her waist. The heat from his hand passed through the fabric of the pajamas to her body, and finally reached her face. She pulled the bedsheet up again, and this time only a pair of round eyes and a pair of red ear tips were left. "Aren't you going to sleep?" "Yes, sleep." The man responded obediently, and then really closed his eyes. "Really sleep?" Ignoring the slight feeling of loss in her heart, she cursed herself for being useless in her heart. Then she turned her head and looked at his face greedily. The moonlight shone in from the window lattice and hid his face. His eyelashes were long, casting a small fan-like shadow under his eyes. "Ya said that he would be a great pharaoh, and everyone would love him and worship him as a true god." Although they have been sleeping in the same bed for a while, she still felt strange when she looked at him. Such a wonderful person, does he really belong to her? He just did nothing, and he was already a god in her heart, she thought blankly. "Why don't you sleep?" His voice sounded in her ears, and a big hand pulled down the sheet covering her face, revealing her face completely. Looking at her sparkling eyes, Lin Ya secretly gritted her teeth. Why did he ask her if she was still not sleeping? He himself didn't sleep. "Get up." After saying that, she pushed him off the pillow without saying anything, and the wet pillow was thrown to the ground by her. "Your hair is not dry yet, why are you sleeping?" It would be strange if he didn't have a headache tomorrow morning if he fell asleep like this. Amónhotep was pushed up by her with good temper, and before he was completely pushed up, he fell back into her arms like a boneless person, resting his head on her thighs, aggrieved. "But yeah, it will take a long time for my hair to dry." The world was spinning, and the back of his head fell heavily on his pillow. The boy looked down at her, with a wicked smile on his lips. "Why don't we do something interesting?" The night was still long, and the waist chain jingled. Lin Ya looked at the dark blue ceiling on the roof with a confused face, and felt like a star on it, in the clouds. "Something seems wrong, right? Didn't we agree to go to bed?" Abydos has the unfinished funeral temple of Amónhotep's grandmother, Tishri. "Since we are here, we have to check the progress of the project." Early the next morning, Amónhotep brought Lin Ya to the funeral temple in the outer city of Abydos. The tops of the two pyramids shone in the morning sunlight, and the light on them seemed to be a golden sun. The 50-meter-high pyramid is already spectacular from a distance, and even more so from a close distance. Standing below, Lin Ya felt like a little person in the land of giants, but fortunately, her Aksha was also a little person like her. The intact pyramid tower is pure white, paved with neat plaster stones, and the murals on it have more content than the last time I saw it. His Majesty Amos, the son of the moon god, went to Sinai again, conquered the refugees there, quelled the rebellion in Libya, and went south to quell Nubia, making them honestly give up their minerals. Countless treasures were carried to Amos. The leader with obvious foreign features fell at Amos's feet, kissed the ground at his feet, and expressed his absolute submission. The other funerary temple of Tishri was still in the final stage of decoration. A large number of architects and painters were standing on the scaffolding and painting on it, depicting Tishri's glorious life. She was a witness to the rise of the entire kingdom, from the distant era of King Theo, until Amos gained a foothold and expelled the Hyksos. Only then did she peacefully close her eyes that saw through the wisdom of the world. "The last time I came here, it was the busy farming season. There was no one here except for the guards. Now it is the slack farming season during the flood season. Farmers come from their hometowns to contribute to the construction of the kingdom. Land is extremely scarce in Kemet. After all, it is a kingdom built along the river. Only the land along the river is the most fertile and suitable for planting. However, there are so many people in the country. If everyone has to allocate land, it must be not enough. Among these few lands, a large part belongs to the king, the temple, and the nobles. But if you want to own a piece of land, it is also very simple. As long as you obey the kingdom's dispatch, join the army or build a building, you can own a piece of land that belongs to you. Except for additional taxes, everything else belongs to you. So as long as it is the slack farming season, countless farmers in the kingdom will come to the construction site for the king and for themselves. The crowds of people were like flies, almost covering the walls of the pyramid, either painting their heads or toes. Among them, the literate scribes were indispensable. They mixed in and wrote down the life of Tishri in neat hieroglyphics. The scene was more or less shocking. Lin Ya looked up at the sun-like spire below and admired it from the bottom of her heart. "Do you like it?" Amónhotep hugged her waist from behind and pointed to the top of the pyramid with his fingertips. My father said that Abydos is a sacred land, so he built such a funeral temple for my grandmother here. If you like it, maybe I can build one for us. He said it affectionately and slowly, and the warmth rose from Lin Ya's heart and rose to her heart. There was a loud noise in the distance, and they looked in the direction of the sound. Under the glorious pyramid, the white wall was stained with large flowers of blood. Chapter 219 Secret Place. Someone fell from the scaffolding. There were so many people standing on such a fragile scaffolding. The heavy weight caused it to break in the middle. The dozen people standing on it all fell from a height of more than 10 meters, and some of them fell on the people on the next floor. The whole scene suddenly became like a purgatory on earth. Amónhotep raised his foot and walked in that direction. Lin Ya hurriedly lifted the hem of her skirt behind him. A priest came from the temple of Osiris, and the rough stretcher lifted the injured architect and rushed back to the place of treatment. However, some of them never had the chance to return to their hometown. The height of more than 10 meters is not too high. If you are lucky, you can still save your life. But after all, it is a construction site. There are all kinds of things on the ground. Some people fell from a height and fell directly onto the gravel and wood on the ground. Some suffered fractures, and some died. Another group of workers came forward in an orderly manner, knocked off the blood-stained plaster stone, and replaced it with a new one. They were numb to the scene before them. Lin Ya walked among the wounded, not knowing what to do. She could only do some simple work when the priests were too busy. Amónhotep found the construction manager and asked other workers to make some stretchers to carry the people who the priests could not carry to the temple. Those who fell were his people. As long as they were still alive, he would not let them be taken away by Anubis easily. The wounded under his command was seriously injured. A piece of broken scaffolding was deeply inserted into his arm. This position was very dangerous, as if it had pierced the artery inside. Even if it was not pulled out, it would still bleed continuously. Lin Ya tore off a piece of cloth from the corner of her clothes and tied it tightly above his wound to slow down the blood flow and prevent him from dying from excessive blood loss. The man was already a little unconscious. He slightly opened his unfocused eyes and muttered to himself, "Are you the great goddess sent by Osiris to pick me up? No, I'm the one who is saving you. You have to hold on. Your current injury is very light. As long as you get to the temple, you can be cured." Lin Ya comforted him in a gentle voice. This kind of injury can be cured. The doctor will use hemostatic drugs to stop the bleeding for him, but the subsequent inflammation problem will be more difficult. But I have already felt Anubis's call. I can't survive. The man's voice was trembling, with a hint of crying in it. My name is Suzette. Please ask the supervisor to know my hometown and pay my salary to my relatives. May the great Osiris have mercy on my family. I am the only laborer in my family. After I die, they will be landless people. His voice became lower and lower, and finally it was inaudible. Lin Ya excitedly clenched his hand. No, Suzette. Please think about your family. You can't just give up. You can't. But no matter what she said or did, she pressed his chest like crazy, but she still saw the light in the man's eyes gradually faded, and finally he lost his life. His hand slid from her palm, and finally she was left with only blood on her hands. This was a stranger who left the world like this. This was not the first time she saw someone die in front of her, but she felt sad and was about to collapse. This was a living person. She couldn't understand why he died. Obviously, the amount of bleeding was not much. As long as he waited for the rescue of the priest, he could survive. The workers who were carrying the body came over expressionlessly, one by the hand and the other by the foot, dragging their co-worker away like an animal. Lin Ya then discovered that there was another stone under his head. It was sharp and covered with red and white brain contents. This was the fatal factor. After that, Lin Ya participated in the treatment of several slightly injured construction workers and distributed medicines and bandages to them. Fortunately, their injuries were only superficial, and they were not as unfortunate as Suzette and hit stones and broken wood. This also made her feel a little relieved. The lower level of the pyramid in Titishiri was almost replaced. The last piece of plaster was pasted on, and the whole pyramid was brand new. The new scaffolding was set up again, and another group of workers climbed up and filled the gaps with their brushes, as if nothing had ever happened. Amónhotep was in a heavy mood after the visit ended in this way. Lin Ya was also very depressed. Don't be sad, you tried your best. Amónhotep hugged her stiff body and comforted her softly. He saw what happened before. This was the fate of that person. He would die eventually. On the contrary, as a princess, she was able to go out and rescue the civilians in person. This was already a good thing. At least in the history of Kemet, no princess or queen had ever helped the civilians like this. She really did what she said, caring for their people like her own children. But Aksha, you saw everything today, don't you have any feelings? She sobbed softly, with a slight tremor. What do you have to feel? Such things happen from time to time, I just saw it. In the process of building the funeral temple, there are always workers who lose their precious lives in various accidents. They were either killed by falling boulders or fell from a height. Today's group of people are already lucky. Even if they died, they were lucky to have intact bodies. As long as such buildings are not built again, no one will die in such a meaningless way. She looked back at his eyes, with great seriousness in her eyes. Yeah, do you know the symbol of this kind of funeral temple? In ancient times, there was chaos between heaven and earth, and the first island rose in the endless ocean. The island was in the shape of a triangular cone. God created the world on this island, and the king walked towards eternal life through such a ladder. He frowned and explained to her patiently, then do you believe in gods? Lin Ya smiled faintly, and then looked at his speechless expression. You have never believed in gods, so why would you have to do such a thing for this reason? If I remember correctly, the previous kings did not build such funeral temples anymore, right? That's because they didn't have enough wealth to build them. If they had, they would have done it. At the end of the chaotic old kingdom, people were hungry, and the tombs of the superiors could no longer afford to take enough building materials from the quarry in Aswan, so they used mud bricks instead. How could such a tomb withstand wind and rain? After only a few hundred years, only a rough outline remained. Compared with them, his father was obviously wise and powerful. His mausoleum was buried far away from here. This place was built only to commemorate his achievements. Although the funeral temple was placed in the open, no one would dare to steal it. Even if he succeeded, it would only be a few worthless things. Do you have enough wealth now? The people have just walked out of the shadow of war, and everything is waiting for a revival. Such words made Amónhotep unable to refute. In fact, why did he want to build such a building? It was basically to satisfy his own selfish desires and vanity. That was where the sun's rays could shine. The rising sun every day would plate his name on the top with golden light, radiating to the entire land. That was the appearance of the sun god. Aksha, we can find a mountain that is equally high and dig our tomb in the belly of the mountain. This is the same and more secret. It is a creation of nature. She turned around and hugged him back, and whispered her suggestion. She felt a little guilty about saying this, because this was basically the burial style of ancient Egypt after that. The king gave up the magnificent and conspicuous pyramids and built his own eternal place in a valley that no one knew about. It was peaceful for hundreds of years. I'll think about it again. He sighed and hugged his wife tightly. This is a symbol of honor from the ancient kings. Who can resist such temptation for a powerful king? Some people say that the first tomb in the Valley of the Kings was not that of Thutmose I, but that of Amónhotep I. It was said before that Amónhotep was worshipped as a god after his death. He and his mother Nefertari were the patron saints of the artisan village in the Valley of the Kings, guarding the craftsmen in the Valley of the Kings. Moreover, outside the tomb of Thutmose I, there is a cave V39 with an even more ancient shape. Many people suspect that it is the tomb of Amónhotep I. Chapter 220. Rumors that cannot be refuted. The big ship went down the river, passing by one big city after another. The sun city dedicated to the god Ra was left behind. The obelisk of the temple in the city was shining in the sun. Amónhotep stretched out a finger and pointed in that direction. He told Lin Ya that it was where the god Ra lived. The northern priests were not as powerful as the southern priests. After all, the main god believed in by the whole country was still Amon. Too much power was concentrated in the hands of Amon's priests. Amónhotep felt that this was not a good thing. He said that when he came to power, he would raise the value of the god Ra again, so that the northern priests would have the capital to compete with the south. Until they reached the border between the upper and lower lands, they arrived at their destination, Memphis. The acacia trees outside the city were no longer as lush and green as they once were. The rising flood bared too many of their branches, leaving only clusters of treetops on the water, like isolated islands. The green leaves were washed away by the flood and swirled away into the distance, leaving only bare branches, stretching in vain in the direction where the leaves drifted away. The scene was somewhat bleak, and Lin Ya sighed slightly. Amónhotep gently rubbed her hair, messing up her neat hair. This action somewhat relieved her melancholy mood. She covered her head with her hands and turned back to glare at him in reproach, but she only received a kiss on her cheek. He left a slightly wet mark on her face and put his arm around her slender waist. When the flood recedes, the acacia will bloom again. With the silt left by the flood, it will only bloom more prosperously. Where will you be when the flowers bloom? She looked at the green leaves floating on the water, with a trace of confusion in her eyes. When the flowers bloom, it will be the pellet season. Where will Aksha be at that time? On the boat a few days ago, she had inadvertently heard the secret talk between Thutmose and Amónhotep. The nomads in West Asia were not very peaceful. After returning to Memphis, they should go to war soon. She didn't want to be separated from him for so long, but she also understood that her husband was destined to do great things and should not be tied down by love. In this case, would he accompany her to watch the flowers in the city this year? No matter where I am, I will always be with you. The hand on the waist tightened a little. The man's chin rested on her shoulder, and the warm breath from his mouth sprayed on her ears, bringing a tingling feeling, because you live in my heart. Compared with the scenery outside the city, the Memphis palace is still the same. It may not be so appropriate to say that it is the same as before. The inside and outside have been repainted. Shabaka is still in the original place, continuing to be his chief guard. When he saw Lin Ya and Amónhotep coming together, a trace of disbelief flashed across his eyes very quickly, but this look only stayed for a short moment and then dissipated in silence. He sorted out his thoughts, then respectfully saluted and greeted them, and welcomed them into the gate of the Memphis palace. Lin Ya felt a little guilty when she saw Shabaka. How could she not feel guilty? A few months ago, he treated her like a half-hostess. Although she had denied it at that time, the appearance of Tiaya later made the matter develop in an unpredictable direction. In the last moments of Sepal's life, Tiaya could be said to have an unusually close relationship with him. How could this meeting not be awkward? How could she say something like the souls were different? Shabaka would not believe it. So she could only lower her head and walk forward in the direction of her memory, ignoring the looks from others. She had stayed here for too long, and almost everyone in the palace recognized her. When she walked on the road and heard whispers in her ears, she could only make her skin thicker and thicker. Fortunately, Aksha had been asked to leave by Thutmose's adjutant a long time ago, otherwise she felt she would have fainted. Isn't that Miss Tiaya? Why is she back again? Don't talk nonsense. She is not a lady anymore. What else could that be? She is the princess of His Highness Amónhotep, don't you know? Isn't she the fiancée of His Highness Sefer? I think you are talking nonsense. If you don't believe me, go ask others. Has the issue of His Highness Amónhotep's princess been reported back a long time ago? I just didn't expect that the Miss Tiaya they were talking about was really her. Ah. Then I am a little suspicious about the reason why she was so close to the two princes. How can she be so thick-skinned? Do you want to die? She is the princess, and she is not someone that maids like you can discuss in private. A stern voice came over, and the world was suddenly quiet. Lin Ya breathed a sigh of relief, then looked up in that direction. She was quite curious. Who would be able to speak for someone as notorious as herself? Standing in the middle of the maids was a girl of about 17 or 18 years old. She looked familiar, but Lin Ya couldn't remember when she had seen this person before. Her skin was slightly yellow and smooth, and she stood out among the dark yellow crowd. She looked very high-ranking, otherwise everyone would shut up when she spoke. She looked mature, and with her serious face, people would believe that she was in her 20s. She felt Lin Ya's gaze, bowed in this direction from a distance, and then stood back in her original position respectfully. The group of people who had been talking about her just now stopped talking immediately. Her Royal Highness has come over, but she shouldn't do anything to me, right? After all, she used to be very easy to talk to in this palace. Will she let them go for the sake of knowing each other? These people were indeed very familiar with Lin Ya before. During the days when she took care of Sepal, they were friends who could talk to her. But she couldn't understand why the relationship that was very good before had become like this now. Talking bad about her behind her back, using such cheap words to belittle herself. If possible, she herself did not want to leave such an impression. With a slight mistake in her steps, Lin Ya kept silent and continued to move forward, but was blocked in front of her by someone. "Your Highness." She looked up and saw Tunia's serious face. "Tunia? What's the matter?" There was no need to stop her in the middle of the road, right? How should these maids be punished for talking about the royal family? Tunia looked up at her, then looked back at the group of maids who were like quails in water, and said in a cold voice. Lin Ya sighed and waved her hand. "Forget it, Tunia, What they said was also right, they were just defending Sepal." This realization made her discouraged, because what they said was true. She had nothing to refute. She was indeed Sepal's fiancée, and she also took care of him for so long when he was dying, seemingly affectionate, and finally married Amónhotep. They actually did nothing wrong. If I were an outsider now, I would probably think the same way. "Forget it? Your Highness, what did I teach you?" The maids were relieved to hear Lin Ya's words, and then they heard what Tunia said, and they trembled like sifting chaff. Lin Ya was speechless. "You are a royal family. No matter what you did wrong, you should not be talked about behind your back by these lowly people. If you let them go today, then what prestige will you have in the future?" Tunia frowned, blocking the road tightly, and there was a hint of coldness in her voice. Lin Ya pursed her lips and said nothing. Tunia was forcing herself, but it was undeniable that what she said was right. If she didn't punish these people, then she would lose the first step of coming to the Memphis palace. The impression she left on others was that she was weak and could be bullied. She looked at the group of trembling maids, then at Tunia in front of her, and finally closed her eyes cruelly. "Let's do it according to the rules. Those who discuss the royal family privately will be punished with 30 strokes of the cane for speaking." After that, she left the spot without stopping. The order had been issued, and she didn't want these people to be punished. Chapter 221 Home. Tunia bowed respectfully behind her, and then personally supervised the process of these people being tortured. This punishment was actually too light. According to the law, after such a punishment, they would be exiled to the end of the country and would never be allowed to return to Kemet. Under her supervision, no one dared to let them go. The mouths of the maids were soon beaten to a bloody mess, and some even spat out broken teeth. After all the punishments, Tunia called the guards to drag them to the platform of the palace and kneel in front of the statue of Amos to show them to everyone passing by. Her Royal Highness was still too soft-hearted after all. Only in this way could the rumors be stopped. Tunia was very clear about the marriage of the two princes. She had also heard about the engagement of His Royal Highness Sepal. In fact, it was because of this that Her Majesty the Queen did not like His Royal Highness very much. But since His Royal Highness was already His Royal Highness, he was the face of the Kemet royal family. How could such people be tolerated to trample on him? Amónhotep's living room was rebuilt from the original living room of Sepal, but there was no trace of his presence in it. Everything that Sepal had used had been placed with him in the underground palace forever. This was the first time that the regent prince returned to his palace after his marriage. The decoration inside made Lin Ya speechless, as if she had returned to the night of her wedding again, even more so than that day. Flowers and jewels were strung together and hung in every corner of the wall. Lotus flowers with dewdrops were inserted in alabaster bottles and placed on the table. In the incense burners in the room, expensive spices were burning, and the aroma was fragrant. Colorful ribbons were stretched from one end of the room to the other. Layers of veil hung from the beams, and fluttered up when the wind blew. With a misty smoke filling the room, it was like being in a fairyland. All the furniture was replaced, the furnishings were replaced with new ones, the walls were repainted, the portraits of gods on them were also newly painted, and Amónhotep's favorite strongbow was hung on it, and his toys such as target frisbees were placed on the shelf. In a corner of the room, a desk was quietly placed, and behind it was a tall bookcase, which contained his collection of books. It was not very full, and Lin Ya was thinking about when to put the books he brought in, so that it would be full. Perhaps to welcome its hostess, a female dressing table was added inside. The two dressing tables were placed side by side, piled with jewelry, waiting for its owner to wear. The big bed covered with the gold had not been decorated much yet, only a layer of comfortable and breathable palm mat, on which were placed two pillows that looked very soft. Maids and attendants came in one after another from outside, and placed the items they brought back neatly. More decorations were placed on the shelves, and the little gadgets that Lin Ya liked were placed together with Amónhotep's. A large part of them were bought by Amónhotep for her. He treated her like a child, a dancing doll, a small whistle that could blow bird sounds. These very childish things were now placed together with his darts, and there was an indescribable sense of harmony. Lin Ya stood in the middle of the living hall, and some strange intimacy surged in her heart. This was their future home, and they would spend many, many years here. They could decorate it as they pleased, and there were only the two of them. People in the room left in waves. Lin Ya raised her head inadvertently and saw a familiar figure. It seemed that the person had never left since he came in, and had been putting her things away. She frowned and pulled Ip's arm. That person over there, has she never left? Ip was slightly stunned by her reminder, then thought about it carefully and nodded solemnly. It seems so, Your Highness. After Ip finished speaking, he walked a few steps near the person and walked behind her. However, she seemed to have noticed nothing and sorted out the things in the box by herself. In fact, from Ip's point of view, she didn't seem to be sorting, but seemed to be rummaging through something. Ip reached out and patted her shoulder, and sure enough, he saw that person's body trembled violently, as if she was frightened. She turned around with her eyes wide open, so Lin Ya saw her face clearly. It turned out to be the person who spoke for her outside just now. Your Highness. She called out nervously, then bowed and saluted. My name is Amónhotep, and I'm your personal maid. Amónhotep introduced herself to herself, glancing at the boxes she had opened with the corner of her eye. Cold sweat oozed from her forehead, and she looked sweaty. What are you doing? Ip asked coldly. This sentence seemed to make her sweat flow more happily. Amónhotep lowered her head and said nothing. If you don't say it, then the guards will have to take you down. The speaker was Lin Ya. Although Amónhotep didn't look like she was doing anything good, considering her performance outside just now, she was willing to give Amónhotep a chance to confess. If she insisted not to tell him, then we could only handle the matter in a fair and impartial manner. Lin Ya was not such a heartless person. She thought clearly that her current identity was different from the past, and her husband Amónhotep's identity was even more special. If someone who would harm him got in because of her tolerance, the people of the entire kingdom would be the ones who would suffer. Those boxes contained not only her own personal belongings, but also Akshis. This consequence was not something that everyone could bear. Your Highness, I'm just looking for my own earrings. Amónhotep was silent for a long time, hesitating. How did your earrings get into your Highness's box? I didn't believe it, and instinctively felt that she was lying. It fell in when I was sorting things just now. Both of them fell in. No, someone gave it to me just now. I didn't have time to wear it, and I held it in my hand. Amónhotep's face flushed at the right time, and she looked like a girl in love, which made people think that the person who gave her the gift must be a man. In that case, go and empty the contents of those boxes. If not, Amónhotep, you should think about your fate. Lin Ya said lightly. She didn't believe that there would be such a coincidence, but if there was, that would be the best. Ip overturned the boxes one by one, and finally a pair of gold earrings fell out of one of them. Lin Ya breathed a sigh of relief. Amónhotep took small steps forward, picked up the earrings, and put them on her ears directly this time. I'm sorry, Your Highness, I won't be so reckless next time. If you want to punish me, then you can do it. How can people say this? Why should she be punished if she didn't make any mistakes? Lin Ya waved her hand to let them go, but the feeling of something being wrong kept lingering in her heart. She still felt something was wrong, but she couldn't tell what it was. She thought about it for a long time but couldn't come up with any clues. The bedding had been made out, so she simply lay down on it. She was exhausted from the long journey, and the smell of myrrh penetrated her nostrils. She smelled the sweet fragrance and fell into deep sleep. After sleeping for an unknown period of time, Lin Ya felt her waist sink in her dream. She turned around without opening her eyelids and got into the man's arms, humming a few times. The man was not surprised to be hugged by her, but laughed softly and used his hands to tease her hair spread on the bed. She was tickled and opened her sleepy eyes, muttering dissatisfiedly, "Why are you so annoying to disturb my sleep as soon as you come back?" Amónhotep kissed her half-open eyes carefully, and finally bit her face with his sharp teeth. The pain came from her face, and she woke up completely. She sat up and poked his face angrily. "Why are you biting me again? I'll go get a sledgehammer and grind your teeth flat for you." So it wasn't a dream. A hazy voice came out of his mouth, successfully stopping Lin Ya's next move. What dream? Yeah, you know, a few months ago, I was lying alone on this bed, and I had many similar dreams. I dreamed that you were lying beside me, hugging my waist and kissing my face when I came back. Those days were too long, too long. She appeared in his dreams again and again. Today, when he came back from work, she actually appeared in front of him, making him unable to tell whether it was reality or illusion. His expression eliminated the anger in Lin Ya's heart. She lay down again and got back into his arms, poking his chest with her fingers little by little. What are you thinking about? We are married. If I'm not here, should I sleep outside? Separated right after marriage? In the future, this family will not only have me, but in a few years, there will be little radish heads running all over the floor. Go to bed quickly. After saying that, she raised her hand and patted Amónhotep's face, found a comfortable position in his arms and closed her eyes. The word home made the boy's eyes brighten a little, and he hugged the girl tightly. From then on, he was no longer alone in this huge palace. Here was his Ya, and their children. This was their home. Why did I write more while writing? I wanted to stop at 2000, but I didn't stop. It's 2800. Chapter 222. Adding ingredients. Amónhotep was indeed her personal maid. It was said that she was promoted by the palace steward because of her good performance. It was expected that Amónhotep would do things properly and leave a good impression on Lin Ya. However, this was obviously a failure. On the first day, Lin Ya saw her rummaging through her box. Although she was not caught in the act, this kind of thing made people feel uncomfortable. And Lin Ya finally remembered where this familiarity came from. Wasn't this the person she saw when she woke up from sleeping on the platform? Her performance at that time was not like this, and it was not much different from those people's gossip. Now, has her personality changed? Thinking of this, she became more alert. She was alert, but Amónhotep obviously didn't think so. She went in and out of Lin Ya's bedroom to brush her favorability in front of her. She was very attentive, but not so attentive. She had a good sense of proportion. She was not annoying and had good eyesight. If it weren't for the episode on the first day, Lin Ya might really rely on her. In the morning, Lin Ya woke up from the empty living room. As soon as she made a little noise, Amónhotep prepared water for washing and came to help her get up. This speed was half a step faster than Ipt. The water was drawn from the holy lake of the temple early in the morning. With the blessing of God, it was so soft that it could not be put aside. The branches used for brushing teeth were already stained with tooth powder made of irises. There was no shortage of cosmetics and jewelry for morning makeup. It was really thoughtful. After everything was taken care of, Lin Ya changed into a suspender skirt and a white tunic on the outside. The corners were embroidered with lotus and sedge patterns with gold thread, and a big knot was tied around the waist with a red ribbon. She sat down in the chair and ate breakfast while putting on makeup. This was a bit inappropriate, but there was no way. It was too late. Tunia was waiting for her, and it was already a bit late. Ipt and Amónhotep were busy behind her, putting on makeup and braiding her hair. She took a few bites of the snacks on the table, and felt a little dry in the mouth, so she drank a sip of milk. The taste of the milk was not right. There was an indescribable taste in it, a little bitter, and a little sweet, which reduced the original fragrance. She frowned, put it back, spit out the milk in her mouth, and rinsed her mouth with water. After rinsing several times, the taste was slightly reduced. This action did not escape Amónhotep's eyes. She paused, and the eyeliner under the pen was a little crooked. So she hurriedly began to remedy it, wiping and tracing, and finally drew the eyeliner back to its original shape. Amónhotep, what did you add to the milk today? Lin Ya asked casually, pressing the corner of her mouth with a cloth. Today's milk was brought by Amónhotep, and this situation has never happened before. It's some calming herbs. Amónhotep was very calm in the face of her question, without a trace of panic. Your Highness has not slept well at night recently, so I wanted to make you sleep better. Uneasy. Lin Ya frowned at this remark and looked back at Ipt. Ipt nodded slightly, acknowledging Amónhotep's words. She really didn't sleep well these days. Amónhotep hasn't been back for a few days. According to his attendants, he set off for Tanis's military camp. It can be seen that the matter is very urgent. He just asked someone to notify Lin Ya and didn't even show up. In the Memphis palace where he was not around, Lin Ya felt that every day passed so slowly. Although there were many people around her, she always felt lonely. Every night when she looked at the empty other side of the bed, her heart was also half empty like the bed, feeling wronged and sad. The bad guy left without telling her in person, making her miss him all the time. She felt a little hypocritical. She slept so well before, But now she couldn't fall asleep when she occupied a big bed alone. No one fought with her for the sheets, and no one would stick to her in the middle of the night to wake her up. But why did she miss him so much? This was probably a habit, and he really spoiled her. After finally falling asleep, she always felt restless, always wondering if he would suddenly come back in the middle of the night. She often woke up with a start, and when she woke up, she found that it was all her imagination. This feeling was indeed quite bad, but this was no reason for Amónhotep to add things to her diet. Amónhotep, adding things to my diet without permission, do you know what the crime is? She pointed to the milk that she had only drunk a sip of, and said lightly as she looked at Amónhotep's increasingly paler face. No matter what the reason was for Amónhotep to do this, she was always wrong. Today it was the sleeping vanilla, so what would it be tomorrow? Your Highness, I was inconsiderate. I acted on my own after hearing that you didn't sleep well. There was a hint of uneasiness in her words. However, unlike what they thought, Lin Ya was not angry at all. Instead, she waved her hand nonchalantly and only said that she should be more careful next time. There was not even a slight punishment. Amónhotep went down with gratitude. Lin Ya buckled a chalcedony agate bracelet on her wrist. The hidden buckle made a click sound. She saw Ipe's puzzled eyes in the mirror. Ask whatever you want to ask. Your Highness, why didn't you punish her? It's not a good thing to indulge her like this. What if he put something else next time? Ipe didn't understand. Amónhotep's approach was obviously not advisable. No other master would tolerate her behavior, but his own Highness actually endured it? Of course I know what she did was wrong, but if we punished her like this, how can we know who is behind her? What is the whole story? If there is really something hidden behind it, someone else would have been sent. Comparatively, keeping her might be a good choice. Your Highness. Your Highness, how could she be so bold? What if Amónhotep's goal was her life? What would happen if she was kept by his side? Don't worry, I won't leave your side for a moment in the future. I'm safe with you protecting me. I won't need her for personal matters like food and drink in the future. I'll also talk to Aksha about this when he comes back. She used a glass rod to add another stroke to the corner of her eye, drawing a slightly upturned hook, and then turned around and gave Ipe a comforting smile. There seemed to be nothing wrong with this, but Ipe was still worried. Now no one knew Amónhotep's background. What if? Okay, give this glass of milk to Saha first, and ask him to find a pharmacist to see what's in it. It seems that I have to cultivate some of my own confidence. In such a large palace, there is no one I can trust except Ipe. Fortunately, Aksha kept Saha, otherwise I wouldn't be able to find anyone to do this. Why don't you do it? Why are you looking at me like this? Ipe was still in a daze. This kind of look rarely appears. She found it a little funny and asked, I just think that His Highness is a little different. He has been more thoughtful and has become more methodical in doing things. Ipe, I'm just grown up. I can't always let others think about this kind of thing for me. She smiled gently, and her upturned eyes had a hint of maturity. The morning sun was just right, neither hot nor dazzling. Tunia chose the place to study under the flower racks on both sides of the platform. There was a breeze blowing over, so it wouldn't be too unbearable even at noon. The course we are studying today is still related to God, but it is no longer a basic introduction, but the duties of the queen and the obligations she must fulfill in the temple. When Amónhotep ascends the throne, as his wife, these are necessary and must not be learned. It's just that Lin Ya thinks it's too early to learn now. Although Amos is not in good health, Nefertari is in good health. Amos once said that the king's wife will be the wife of God, but there is also a point. Only when Nefertari no longer exists, the position of the wife of God will be passed down. Otherwise, she will sit in this position for as long as she lives. However, it is Tunia who has the final say on what courses to arrange, and I will learn whatever she teaches. Chapter 223 Eavesdropping. In the early morning, when the first ray of sunlight jumps out from the horizon, as the wife of God, you have to serve your husband, the great god Amon. You have to treat him with the most pious heart as if he were your real husband, clean his face and rinse his mouth, change his old clothes from yesterday, put on brand new god clothes and jewelry, and dress up again. You also have to apply sweet ointment for him and put on makeup yourself. Lin Ya wrote it down with a pen, while complaining in her heart, if you really treat the statue of God Amon like your husband, he. She has never dressed Aksha and put makeup on him, let alone applied sweet ointment. She is too lazy to apply it herself, and it feels greasy when she touches it. I chased her to apply it every day. If it weren't for the skin being damaged, no one would dare to touch her with ointment. If you treat God Amon in this way, you will probably be driven out. Speaking of your husband, what is he doing now? Do you eat and rest on time? Do you put on more clothes at night? Do you miss yourself as much as you miss him? While her mind was wandering away and not discovered by Tunia, she quickly shook her head to get rid of all the messy thoughts. She continued to take notes according to Tunia's words, writing one stroke at a time. Occasionally, she would learn a word she didn't know how to spell. However, Tunia couldn't remember it after writing it once. She had to learn an unfamiliar word many times before she could move on to the next paragraph. Therefore, her learning progress was still very slow. Tunia was a little anxious, but there was no other way. She could only take it step by step. In fact, both Amónhotep and Amos were educated according to the standards of the queen. It was just that she didn't expect that His Highness Amónhotep would not choose her sisters in the end. Fortunately, her recent learning attitude is not bad, and her nature is also okay. Tunia is very confident that she can teach a qualified queen. Time passed quickly and it was already afternoon. Tunia finished a day's teaching and let Lin Ya move freely. She was exhausted, and while no one was around, including Ipton and Hurt, she laid down on the carpet in an ungraceful manner. Her back, which had been stretched out all day, now had a chance to rest, and it was so comfortable. Thinking that she might be seen from this angle, she shrank under the flower vine and hid herself. After making sure that no one would find her, she turned around more comfortably, like a lazy cat. Speaking of cats, it seems that Nafir went out in the morning and never came back. No one knew where he went, but he should come back in the evening, so he wouldn't be lost. She thought randomly and didn't know how long she had been lying there. Suddenly, she heard a conversation next to her ear. "Did you find the thing?" It was a man's voice, low and hoarse, as if he had deliberately suppressed the tone, making it difficult to distinguish the original timbre. "No." A woman replied in a low voice, and the voice was not very real, just like the hum of a mosquito. "You are not enjoying the comfortable life now too much and forget it? Your parents are still waiting for your news in Saracen." The man threatened, "Astarte, I really look for it with all my heart." The woman was also anxious, and her voice was raised a little, and she said hurriedly, "I have searched all the places I can, but there is no similar object. Keep looking." The man ordered coldly, "Yes. Also, don't forget your identity." "Yes." "Looking for something?" "Looking for what?" Somehow, Lin Ya remembered the way Amónhotep searched in her box a few days ago. Could this woman be Amónhotep? Did she deliberately approach her for that thing? Then is this man the person behind her? The leaves of the flower are too dense, and she can't see anything from her angle. She was a little anxious, and slightly pulled open the leaves to see what the person outside looks like. Is it Amónhotep, and who is that man? The person who could walk around the palace openly like this would not be an ordinary person. He must be disguised as a guard or servant. They might be harmful to Aksha and the kingdom, so we cannot just sit back and watch. Who's there? It was just the slight sound of the petals shaking, but the man was sensitive enough to sense it. Lin Ya subconsciously retracted her head. Even though there were so many leaves blocking her, she could still feel that the man's eyes were like a vicious snake, locking onto her through the leaves. She didn't dare to speak or make a sound. She silently covered her mouth and nose, trying not to breathe. Even so, she could still hear footsteps getting closer and closer, and the rustling sound rang in her ears. She could feel the nervous sweat seeping out of her body, and the man's hand had already opened the outermost layer of petals. Meow! A cat jumped out from the petals, making a louder sound of leaves shaking. It flew past her, then stretched out its claws and grabbed the man's hand without any hesitation. She heard the man shout, "Ah! My hand!" This time, it was obvious that he had grabbed it hard. The man even forgot to lower his voice. A clear young voice came out, and he cursed in a low voice, "Damn it!" He stretched out his big hand to grab the cat's neck. Nafel. Lin Ya felt like she was going to stop breathing. It was Nafel who saved her, but now it was going to be caught and killed. She had to think of a way to save it. But how could she save it while protecting herself? Damn it! It ran away. Before she could come up with a solution, she heard the man curse again. Only then did she feel relieved and remained frozen behind the flower vine. "Have we been discovered?" the woman asked in a trembling voice. "No, it's just a cat. I'm leaving now. Let me know when you get the stuff." Yes, not long after the man left, the woman also left. There was no sound outside. Lin Ya breathed a sigh of relief. Just as she was about to move her fingers, she seemed to think of something and stopped moving. Am I overthinking? The man actually came back and muttered to himself. There was another sound of footsteps going away. This time he really left. But Lin Ya still didn't dare to get up, because she realized belatedly that a cobra with its tongue spitting out was coiled on the flower vine. Cobra? She didn't dare to move, nor did she dare to shout. I forgot who told me that cobras have poor eyesight and can only catch prey by smell. Moreover, if they run, their speed is definitely much faster than that of a cheetah. In this era, if you are bitten by it, you will be in trouble. She and the snake were facing each other silently. It refused to leave and kept coiling there. Its tail would flick from time to time. Its bright red tongue was spitting out, and sporadic venom was occasionally sprayed out. The leaves it touched immediately became much more withered. How poisonous is this snake? How can it be so poisonous? If she had known there was a snake earlier, she would not have dared to hide here even if she had the courage. What should she do now? Can she only wait for it to crawl away by itself? I must have not checked the almanac when I got up early today. I was tricked and almost killed, and now I have to deal with such a poisonous snake. How could I be so unlucky? I had been in the same position for a long time, and now there is such a snake, and I can't move. Lin Ya felt her legs were so sore, and the snake still didn't leave. She wanted to cry. Why hasn't it come back yet? Even if it's Amónhotep comes back, it will be fine. Her legs were getting more and more sore and weak. Just when she couldn't hold on any longer and was about to make a sound, a yellow and white figure rushed onto the flower stand at an extremely fast speed and grabbed the dangerous cobra with one claw. The snake was enraged, and the hissing sound became louder and louder. It was entangled with the yellow and white figure. Lin Ya took this opportunity to roll out of the flower stand and watched the battle nervously outside. It was Nefer, it's back again. The sharp claws grabbed the snake again and again, and the hair on the tail exploded. The snake fought back and wanted to entangle it, but it was not as flexible as its body. It pounced several times but failed. It seemed that Nefer had the upper hand, but this was only temporary. It was too fat. After a few rounds, it was obviously exhausted and fell off the flower stand. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 224, Eternal Highness. The cobra also fell from the flower stand soon after, and quickly coiled up on the ground, with its neck bulging, as if it was about to spit out venom. Nefer no longer had the strength to fight back, and his movements were not as flexible. Lin Ya didn't know where she got the courage from, but at the critical moment, she pulled down the gauze beside the flower stand, rushed forward and covered the snake's head. The four corners were quickly gathered together to form a pocket. She tied the knot and watched the snake twisting and jumping inside. After confirming that the cobra would not get out, she fearfully picked up the heavy bag. The snake was still struggling inside, pushing the bag down again and again, causing her to panic. She hurriedly took it to the platform outside the flower stand, picked up a stone statue and smashed it down with all her might. The cobra struggled violently at first, and hissing sounds continued to come out of the bag, but Lin Ya could no longer hear anything. She numbly kept hitting the bag, and after an unknown amount of time, the snake inside gradually stopped moving. The surface of the bag was covered with venom and blood sprayed from it. The snake in the bag had turned into a pool of meat paste. She was frightened by the snake's constant jumping and could only keep hitting the bag, unaware of anything else. Shabaka led the patrol team here and saw her smashing a bloody bag like a possessed person. He frowned and was stunned for a moment, then walked over. The ground nearby was spreading bright red, and the stone statue in her hand was sticky. The flesh and blood stuck to the stone statue and splashed on her face, but she seemed to feel nothing at all. Your Highness. He called softly, but Lin Ya didn't respond. Your Highness. He called again, but the person still didn't seem to hear him. He thought again and again, stretched out a hand, and patted Lin Ya's shoulder. This pat woke Lin Ya up from her crazy state. She was shocked and screamed at the top of her voice. She jumped to the side very quickly, and her body kept shaking. It took a long time for her to slowly recover. Shabaka. Her body was still a little trembling, and her upper and lower teeth kept fighting. She heard her voice squeezed out of her throat, which was dry and deadly. "It's me, Your Highness, what's wrong with you?" Shabaka asked hesitantly. What happened to make her like this? "There's a snake." "Snake? Where is the snake?" Shabaka drew the short knife from his waist and looked around vigilantly. In the gardens of the palace, snakes are still very common. Generally, they are not poisonous, but if they scare the prince, it will be bad. In the bag. Shabaka silently put the dagger back into the scabbard. What could he say? It was just a snake, and it was smashed into pulp, and it was scared like this. "Your Highness. It's dead. You're fine. Go and see if it's still alive." With someone around, Lin Ya's mood calmed down a lot, and she spoke more fluently, but she still didn't dare to step forward to open the bag. "Your Highness." Shabaka found it a little funny. The bag was smashed flat, and blood and flesh were splattered everywhere. How could it still be alive? Having said that, he still obeyed the order and stepped forward to untie the knot on the bag. However, he was stopped by Lin Ya at the moment he was about to touch it. "Be careful. I heard that snakes can bite people long after they have died." "Yes, Your Highness, I will be careful." It was a beheaded snake. It could still attack people and release venom for a long time after its head and body were separated. But it couldn't be this kind of snake that was smashed so hard that even its mother couldn't recognize it. The knot was cut open, and Shabaka gently shook off the bag, and a piece of rotten meat fell out. It couldn't be deader. So he took a step forward respectfully and saluted Lin Ya. "Your Highness, it's dead and won't bite anyone anymore. If this can bite people, he will change his name to Idiot. Quick! Get it away." Seeing the dead snake falling in front of her again, Lin Ya screamed uncontrollably. Although it could no longer be seen in its original appearance, the appearance of its bulging neck just now has always remained in her mind, and she couldn't forget it even if she wanted to. "Yes." Shabaka obeyed and asked people to use cleaning tools to sweep away the dead snake and the bag, and then used a brush to clean the stone slabs on the ground. Soon it returned to the state where nothing had happened. There should be nothing for him to do here. He stepped back and planned to leave. He caught a glimpse of the pale face that had not yet recovered. He paused, and finally couldn't suppress the trace of pity in his heart. "Your Highness, it's just a non-venomous snake. It is not poisonous, not a venomous snake, you can rest assured." "No, Shabaka, I can see clearly, it's a cobra." "Cobra? What is that?" Shabaka thought he had never heard of this kind of snake, and couldn't help wondering. After a panic, Lin Ya finally realized that she had used some modern terms, and immediately changed the words in a hurry. But she was not sure how to call a cobra here. "It's the one with patterns on the back. The neck will swell up. Puff-necked snake." Shabaka gestured and said to let him know what she was talking about. After listening to her, his face became nervous. He walked a few steps to the side of the smashed meat paste and brushed away the dust on it. After seeing the appearance of the fine scales, he finally became more cautious. It turned out to be a puff-necked snake. Although there are many snakes in the palace, this species has never appeared, not to mention near the flower stand. This kind of place has always been the focus of snake expulsion. How could such a poisonous snake sneak in? Fortunately, she is fine. Boundless relief rose from her heart, celebrating herself and her survival. If she really had something wrong, I'm afraid that prince would not forgive everyone here in a rage. Lin Ya's eyes swept around Shabaka and the hands of the guards around him, and then pursed her lips. "Should I talk about that thing? Strangers have sneaked into the palace, maybe among the guards, they are looking for something, but can these people in front of her really be trusted?" After hesitating for a moment, she finally didn't say it. If the female voices and hurt, these carefully selected people with innocent identities can be the insiders, then these are even more unreliable. But what about Shabaka? Is he trustworthy? When the guards retreated one by one, she looked up and looked directly into Shabaka's eyes, not missing any of his subtle expressions. "Shabaka, where's Sharuhan?" "Sharuhan." The clenched fist slowly loosened, and the moisture inside was blown away by the breeze. She saw Shabaka's face showing a puzzled look, as if wondering why she suddenly asked about this place. "You just need to tell me where this is." This expression made Lin Ya believe him a little bit, and she continued to ask, "Sharuhan is the last place where His Majesty Amos expelled the Hyksos. It is the border of the kingdom. They are now gathered there, and it is also the target of His Highness's expedition this time." "Is that so? Those people are Hyksos? They sneak into the palace, looking for unknown items. After a long silence, Shabaka stood there without leaving. She saw his mouth moving, wanting to say something but stopping. Shabaka, just say whatever you want. This sentence made Shabaka relax a little. He took a deep breath and then asked the doubts in his heart these days, Your Highness, how did you get together with His Highness Amónhotep? He refused to believe that Mystic Isle would be such a person at the time, and didn't believe that she had no feelings for the deceased His Highness Sepal, just for the position of queen as outsiders said. If this was really the case, then in His Highness's last days, she had no need to be so good to His Highness. At that time, His Highness had clearly lost power. But looking at her current appearance, her married life with His Highness Amónhotep is so happy and sweet, Shabaka is not sure what the reason is. I can't explain these things, but it is indeed not like what outsiders say. If you think like them, there is nothing you can do. Soul swapping is something that cannot be told to anyone. From this point of view, it seems that everything they said is right. This feeling is so powerless. Even if you really regard Shabaka as a friend, you are destined to lose what you should lose. No, in this case, I will not ask about the reasons of Your Highness. His words surprised Lin Ya. Your Highness will always be Shabaka's Highness. As for why Shabaka is loyal to Ya, I was probably scared by the way she smashed the snake. Yeah, disobedient? Swinging the stone statue. Chapter 225 Memphis Dungeon Gift Pack. The days passed slowly and hard when Amónhotep was away, and the occasional letters he sent back became the object that Lin Ya desired most. I don't know if it was because he was afraid that she would worry, but he rarely mentioned what happened in the military camp in his letters. He just said that he was doing well and would write some interesting things that happened in them. For example, Thutmose was confused and had nothing to do. He took a group of soldiers to poke the beehive outside the military camp. In the end, the beehive was poked down, but before he could eat a mouthful of honey inside, he was stung by bees and turned into a pig's head. The flood in Tanis rose a lot. There was a tributary near the military camp. Occasionally, someone went down to swim and catch fish. The fish tasted good. When he came back, he would catch them for her personally. The enemy was just a small group of scattered soldiers, and they would come back before the flowering season arrived. At the end of the letter, he would always add a sentence. When Lin Ya saw this, she could imagine what he looked like. He stood in front of her, the breeze blew his hair, the gems on the ends of his hair made a clear sound, and his dark eyes curved into a beautiful arc. At the end, he stretched out his hand and hugged her tightly, and his warm breath sprayed on her ears. He said, I miss you. She put the letter against her chest, as if she could still feel his breath left on it, and murmured to herself, I miss you too, I miss you very much. In the letter to him, she replied like this, I am also fine, there is no difficult situation, you must not worry. She did not mention a word about what happened a few days ago. She believed that she could handle this matter and would not let him worry about her safety on the front line. There are many words she can't write now, but she doesn't want others to participate in the letter to Amónhotep. When she encounters words she doesn't know, she simply draws a small picture. You can imagine Amónhotep's helpless and funny expression when he unfolded it. Although the flood outside the city showed no signs of receding, I saw the new buds of the albizia trees when I went out a few days ago. He will come back when it blooms to accompany me to see the golden color of the city. Recently, in addition to studying, I have other things to do. The Opet festival is coming. In the first year of the regent prince, Amónhotep will make a huge statue dedicated to the god Amon and his father Amos. It's just that he was away recently, so the project was handed over to Lin Ya to supervise the progress. The day of the Opet festival was not far away, and the craftsmen worked day and night in the palace. Finally, the last hammer fell on the morning of this day. There was a statue of a lion with a goat's head and a ram with curved long horns, representing the god Amon. A circle of blessings was chiseled at the bottom of the stone statue, and a standing statue of a king stood between the two front paws. On the king's side, the name of Amos was circled in a royal circle, and above it was a row of hieroglyphs. He is the son of Amon. If this is Amos, Lin Ya doesn't think he looks like him. With this kind of eyebrows and a Neem's headscarf, people would believe that he is any king. But if she were asked to give some suggestions to make the sculpture more like him, she couldn't say it, and time did not allow her to make any changes to the statue. Fortunately, there was nothing wrong. She was not sure, so she asked Tunia to check it before sending it away. When Tunia nodded, she asked people to pack it up and send it away. The huge stone statue was pushed by rollers, covered with a layer of cloth, and dragged onto the big ship at the dock. Tunia said goodbye to Lin Ya and boarded the big ship back to Thebes. She was a priest of Amon. She could not be absent from the grand festival of Amon like Opet. She would only come back after the festival. It was also a sacrifice to Amon, so Lin Ya needed to go to the temple to participate this time, but after all, Amónhotep was not there, and the Memphis palace needed someone to take charge. In addition to what happened before, she gave up the celebration. Lin Ya was so happy that she didn't want to go back to Thebes without Amónhotep. She was the boss of Memphis. Whoever wanted to go back would have to wait for Nefertari's lecture. But in front of Tunia, she pretended to be sentimental, as if she was sad that she couldn't go back to worship Amon. She watched the ship leave with tears in her eyes. The ship disappeared on the river under the setting sun. She threw away the handkerchief in her hand and rubbed her red nose hard. I think you put too much pepper. Your Highness, didn't you say that the more you put, the more sincere it is? It's not so much. A bottle of pepper was sprinkled on it. Although Tunia left, the learning should not stop. She was kicked from Amónhotep to Busri like a ball, then to Nefertari, Tantamon, and then to Tunia. Now Tunia left again and kicked her to the priests of the Temple of Ptah. The status of the Temple of Ptah was equivalent to that of the Temple of Amon in the pre-dynastic period. At that time, the center of the kingdom was Memphis. As the main god of Memphis, Ptah was the standard of national belief, and his temple was prosperous for a time. However, with the attack of the Hyksos, Memphis fell, and the rulers established a new regime in Thebes. Ptah's light dissipated, and he and the city of Memphis became the foil of Amon and Thebes. As the saying goes, a lean camel is bigger than a horse. Memphis is still a big city, and Ptah is still one of the most powerful gods besides Amon. The teacher this time is still the chief high priest of the Temple of Ptah. Lin Ya looked at the kind-looking old man in front of her and curled her lips silently. Why did she feel like she was playing a game, the kind that collects items after clearing levels? Hello, respected player XXXX, you have opened the Naken dungeon and harvested a Horus high priest Busri. Opened Thebes and harvested a Amon high priest Tantamon. Have you reached the Memphis dungeon now? Harvest the high priest. What's his name? Neferptah, your teacher. The hairless old man said with a smile. Congratulations on opening the Memphis dungeon and harvesting the high priest Neferptah. Beautiful Ptah? What's this name? Is Ptah beautiful? Isn't he a green mummy? Besides, this name doesn't fit him. This kind face with wrinkles and a plump and round belly, how can it be related to beauty? Anyway, Neferptah's image is much more friendly than the several high priests she had met before. He looks like an old man next door. But why does this old man look a little sleepy? After reading the scriptures for such a long time, Lin Ya still waited for Neferptah to fall asleep, but Neferptah had already fallen asleep. If the papyrus roll covering his face had not fallen down, Lin Ya might not have seen him close his eyes. Well, the teacher falls asleep faster than the student. Is this okay? Lin Ya couldn't help but fall into deep thought. Who am I? Where am I? Am I here to learn how to sleep? Even after she copied the scriptures 3 times, Neferptah still didn't wake up, so she coughed lightly. Seeing Neferptah open his eyes very quickly, pick up the paper roll on the ground, and complete a set of actions in the blink of an eye, regardless of whether the paper roll was picked up or not, he chanted loudly, God who rose from the lotus, you created everything. If Lin Ya hadn't seen him sleeping for an afternoon, people who didn't know would really think he had been so serious. Ahem, have you finished copying the scriptures? Realizing that something was wrong, since the student in front of him didn't need him to read the scriptures, Neferptah's face flushed slightly, and he coughed a few times and said, I finished copying. Then what are you still doing here, Your Highness? It's getting dark, go home and sleep. Lin Ya was driven out of the temple with a confused look on her face, and returned to the living room of the temporary palace in a daze. What was going on? How could this teacher be more excited than herself when talking about sleep? As soon as she stepped in, she saw someone stumbling out from inside, stopping in front of her, panting. It was Amónhotep, who was so excited to see her back. Your Highness. What's the matter? The battle report from the front has come back. His Highness Amónhotep was seriously injured. Why don't you go to the front line to take a look? What? Aksha was injured? The huge pain seemed to tear her heart apart, and she tried to stand firm and not let herself fall. When did it happen? Yesterday. Yesterday? How is it possible? Let's not talk about how Aksha would write such a thing in the war report. Even if it really happened, how did Amónhotep know about it? Sneaking a letter, confessing it without being asked? Your Highness, are you really not going to the front line to see His Highness Amónhotep? Amónhotep said anxiously, no. It's better to listen to Shabaka than to you. Are you trying to trick me into leaving Memphis? Haha, I'm a pig if I believe you. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.